Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor as he travels the Vortex and landed at episode number 70. If it changes into a pineapple, I know we're in trouble. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Glenn.
Thanks for joining us this week.
And as you can tell, we've got the giggles because we had a little bit of a tough time starting this podcast today.
I speak for yourself. I didn't have any problem at all.
How was your guys this week?
It was good. So memorable, I can't remember what I did this week.
Well, you watched Captain America.
I did watch Captain America with my daughter last night.
Sarah and I watched it last night, too.
We're preparing for the Avengers, which will open next weekend. Actually, I'll be standing in line Thursday night.
Do you feel prepared?
Do I feel prepared?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I might.
You've been preparing for the Avengers. Are you ready now?
Oh,
Are you assembled?
I was thinking for the lineup. I said, well, I thought I'd wear some long pants unless it was cold. I mean, yeah, no, absolutely.
Caitlin's
seen it all now.
If it was cold.
Yeah, unless it was cold.
If it was cold. In case it's cold. In case, that's the operative word. Caitlin and I have been watching all of the lead-up films, and Captain America was our last one, and she was a little hesitant to watch that one. And I was a little hesitant, thinking she might not like it, and she ended up really enjoying it. She's one of those types that, she kind of splits her attention when she's watching a movie anyway, but she was really there for the really exciting parts, and so yeah, she enjoyed it a lot. It's still not her favorite of the bunch, which I didn't expect it to be her favorite. It's one of my favorite of the bunch, but
I enjoyed it just as much, if not a little bit more, my second viewing.
I did too, and I think because when you watch it the first time, it's not what you expect. I think Sean put it the best. I think you did it in your review, that it really feels like more of a World War II. I don't want to say spy movie, but how did you say it? Just a World War II adventure movie is what it's
it feels
more
like. It's like The Rocketeer.
Yeah, exactly. And it
Directed
really
by
does.
Joe Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. And so
figure.
when you go into that the first time, see, and that was the other thing. There were two of these iconic superheroes that I was worried about because they started right. They did Iron Man, which is very grounded in quasi-reality, okay? By that I mean there are things that happen, a heightened reality, things that could believably done. Because you're dealing with a populace now that watch movies that are not sci-fi geeks, are not, comic geeks, are not, and what I'm most worried is the mainstream public, because those are the ones that make the films, either they make or break the films, essentially. You've got to please the comic book fans ultimately, but you also have to please that mainstream crowd. And so as they went along and they did Iron Man was a perfect example to start with because it's all science fiction, it's all, weapons and a weapons suit. And even though that's kind of fantastical, it's still kind of grounded in some sort of reality. The Incredible Hulk takes it another step further because they're still using science. It's all grounded in science. And then they did it right, I think, doing Iron Man 2 before they did anything else because, number one, they were riding the popularity and it furthers the mythos that is still grounded. So when Thor comes along, I think, oh, gosh, this is going to be really tough because we're talking rainbow bridges and gods of,
I was very, very worried about how Thor was going to translate.
How are they going to do this? And they did it right. And the best line in that movie is the one that you always quote: "The science you don't, the magic you, or the science you don't understand is magic."
Yeah,
and that makes total sense. And just that one line, I think, fixed it for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Last weekend we rewatched Thor, and they use a version of that line, and I must be paraphrasing it because it's not the exact same.
It's not exactly
and
that.
And then they quote
simply that
a science fiction author who coined that phrase.
Okay.
In the movie.
There you go. There you go. So the cool thing about that is they didn't go all weird gods, and they did kind of alternate planes, and still kind of like an alien aspect to it as opposed to a mythical god aspect to it. And I absolutely loved it. The Rainbow Bridge was done right. They still referred to it as Rainbow Bridge, but it was this, this plasma being
to it that way
just one time. Yeah. I think it was just one time. And it's just this plasma beam that they cross, and it totally made sense. And I think the world bought it because Thor did fairly well.
Yeah.
I don't think it did as well as some of the other. It obviously didn't do as well as Iron Man. I think it did better than the Hulk. That kind of thing.
And speaking of great directors, Kenneth Branagh was a
Oh,
perfect.
he was fantastic. I wish he'd come back
option.
and do Thor 2. But
It seemed like a really odd choice when I first heard
thought the
it.
same thing.
I thought, what?
But that might have
then
been
I watched it
that
and was
might
like,
have been why it works so well.
I
Is
think so,
because
too.
Kenneth Branagh, he is usually a classical director. He does like Shakespeare and those type of things.
That's
he's
why it
real
worked.
grounded. Exactly.
It
and
kept-
so he looked at it from a. Actually, he did it in that sort of what am I looking for? Period type.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't even that. So much.
In
I mean,
another realm.
at its core, that is the story of Thor.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
we've got the
It's a
king
Shakespearean
and
tale.
it is.
Yeah,
It's a
absolutely.
Shakespearean tale. We've got
There you go.
the
There you go.
evil son who's going to overthrow the kingdom and try and oust the father and blah blah blah. I mean, that's it. As soon as I saw it, I went, "Oh my God, that's explained so much. This is a perfect film for Kenneth Branagh."
Yeah. So that works. So that was great, and it did fantastic. And so then, that was what I was worried about that one, and that one worked. So then I actually kind of placated my worries about Captain America. But the problem with Captain America is Captain America takes place in the comic books. Captain America is a World War II hero.
Yes.
That's what it is. And I thought, wow, how are they going to do this? To do an actual origin story that's going to appease me as a comic book fan and the other comic fans and appease the mainstream audience. And the second thing that I was afraid that they were going to do is how do they make it realistic that he's going to end up in the 1980s? Where am I at? In the 21st century.
Did you
with
go
the
back
Avengers.
and watch the original Captain America movie?
That's what it was. Oh my gosh, that is a steaming. And so they did it, and the wonderful thing about it is that they stuck to the origin for the most part.
Yeah.
And that's what's fantastic about it. And they did it, and it worked, and it was a lot of fun, and everybody loved it. So
Yeah.
So they have
Although
they have paced this thing correctly. They've done their work, they've done their research, they've done their homework, and they've done everything right. So and now they're really setting the Avengers up to be this huge epic thing for me. And now again, I'm afraid that I've put this thing up so high in my head because we've been waiting for this thing for 5 years now.
Well, pretty much ever since the very end of Iron Man.
Yeah. And so I've set this thing up in my head, and I'm so afraid that it's going to disappoint. But I'm still totally stoked and excited, and Caitlin is stoked and excited. And unfortunately, of course, I've seen all of them before. She's seen them, so it's going to happen again because I'm going to midnight, but I'm not taking her, and then I'm going to go again on the weekend. So anyway, I've kind of occupied all of our what did you do this week with the explanation of the Avengers.
I had to ask that question.
What did you guys do this week?
Sarah and I just kind of had a relaxed weekend.
You went to Lawrence.
Went to
didn't you?
Lawrence.
Yeah. Did you bring me back a pack of instant custard?
No. It was $7 for that one pack.
I would have paid you back for it. You tweeted it and gave me a picture. So
I sent you a text.
Yeah. Or not tweet. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I don't know. I get everything on my phone, and they start crossing. And
It's all tweets anymore.
Yeah, anymore.
Our Anglophilia mecca in this area is Brits, which we've talked about multiple times. And I come across
We
while I'm
probably
in
ought to
there.
include them in the show notes at some point.
They do have a website.
Maybe I'll do that. I'll do that this time. If you want to go to Brits website, feel free.
Yeah.
I was wandering through. They had a huge Doctor Who display this time. Only thing new was the Journal of Impossible Things,
Oh, okay.
which I thought about picking up, but the Sonic that comes with it is a smaller than actual size version, so I was like, eh. But they also...
You're supposed to say, jelly baby?
Would you like a jelly baby?
Would you like a jelly baby? No, he doesn't always say, would you like? Sometimes he'll just say, jelly baby.
I found packets of instant custard, and so I took a picture and sent it to Glenn and said, you should have done some forethought and gone to Brits. But they didn't have...
And Sean brought these over. That's what that's what prompted the jelly baby.
They didn't have
here
the
we go.
typical... What brand is it, Sean?
Bassett?
Bassett's.
I think Bassett is right, yeah.
They're waiting for shipments on Bassett's Jelly Babies. So this is the only kind of Jelly Babies they had.
Well,
which
you
was
bought him a $7 box, but you wouldn't buy me a $7 bag of
Sarah bought it.
custard.
Would you like a Jelly Baby?
I actually had one before the show. These jelly babies are much better than
I think
the
they are
Bassett's.
too. And you
Sorry,
get,
Bassett, if you're listening.
you get more. It's a bigger
Yeah.
bag.
And for $7, because the smaller bags are like $6.
Five.
Yeah,
Yeah.
5.5 or 6.
Yeah. So I brought...
That's Sean reaching into the bag.
We brought
Not
Jelly
to mention
Babies
they're
for
in
the
like a
podcast.
generic bag in the middle. Well, almost generic. It's not quite generic.
It's not quite.
But you could carry that around.
Mm-hmm.
You almost could.
And I think they're a lot better. They have a better consistency, I
They do.
think.
The texture is a lot better.
Yeah.
The flavor is a lot better, too.
Yeah, I don't remember having a yellow one before.
I don't care. I love jelly babies.
But we
They're all
also...
good to Sean.
I wonder if I would be this addicted to them if it wasn't a Doctor Who thing.
sure
Like
you
if it was just
Yeah.
somebody presented me with a candy and I went, oh, yes. I don't think so. But
Yeah, it's,
I love them.
it's the association. Well,
You need
I'm,
to take them away from me because if you leave them on
every-
the table, I will finish off this box tonight.
Every jelly baby is a piece of your childhood. Let me start that over. Every jelly baby is a piece of your childhood memories in your mouth.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Yes, it is. I'm not even going to go there.
Thank you.
I've also talked before about our quest of finding Daleks, of the minifigures, and we stumbled across a Series 1 package of the minifigures that felt like a Dalek, and so we got it, and it was a red one.
Yeah.
So we have a red Dalek to go with our white one.
And which ones are the red ones now?
The Skittle Daleks.
Yeah, they're the...
I know they're the Skittle Daleks. Each color corresponds to a
they're,
specific
like their
job.
rank.
They're the
Right. I don't
scientist or
remember.
the
I don't know,
strategist
Sean, what was
or
it?
the...
It's your favorite episode of season 5. Don't you
Followed
know
closely
it
by
for,
sexy fish vampires.
I want to say it's the strategist.
You can say that if you want.
That's what I'm going to say.
Okay.
I was very
Keith's
tempted...
going with the strategist.
Let's find out if he's right.
Oh, he's looking that up. We went to
Good, because this is not
Half Price
very
Bookstore,
compelling.
and I was very tempted to pick up. They had a script book of Tom Baker's first season.
And you didn't?
I thought
Oh, that's
I
not
ought to
what
get this
want.
for one of you two, but there's no reason for a gift coming up yet.
Oh,
Well, hold on to it. It's not like we're going to know. It's not going to go old.
Yeah, but I couldn't.
Not like jelly babies.
couldn't-
They're
I
going to go
couldn't-
that bad. You got to give those to him right
I couldn't
away.
get it and tell you.
It's not like a pack of custard that you didn't buy me.
I know what I'm getting Glenn for his birthday.
I'm getting
They come
custard.
in a big pack too.
What-
Here.
Instant custard. And a box of fish fingers.
The a little history on the Red Dalek. Of course, in the new series,
I don't want his whole history. I just want to know what he is.
the Red Dalek was the Supreme.
The
Dalek
Supreme.
When back in the David Tennant, the one that
Oh,
was
right,
in charge
right,
was
right,
red.
right. I knew that.
In the new paradigm, is that the word?
Fair enough.
Red Daleks are drones and are lowest ranked.
Huh.
So that's not even close to strategic.
No. Which one's the strategist? Does it say, or do you just look up Red
I
Dalek?
just looked up Red Dalek.
Yeah. It's not important. Keith's got a red Dalek, which is a drone, and it's the stupidest Dalek there is. No. Just kidding.
It's cool still.
It's still cool
How
you got a
many-
Dalek.
how many
You have a
red
white
Daleks
one,
do you
right?
have?
You have a white one and a red one.
I have
now.
two white ones.
You have two white ones?
We got one in a packet and one that came with the
Yeah.
with
Which
the Dalek set.
we talked about that, how darn that one other one was a white one because,
Yeah.
Okay.
It's still cool that we got one in a sealed package.
Well, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Sean, how was your weekend?
It was kind of like Glenn's. I did a lot of homework. I didn't do a whole lot of everything. Mel and I watched Iron Man, Iron Man Incredible Hulk, which, by the way, you were wrong. I'm going to call you out on this.
About what?
Incredible Hulk, despite not really having anything to do with the crappy Ang Lee Hulk movie, is totally a sequel to the crappy Ang Lee
we're not
Hulk
going to go
movie.
here again. It is absolutely in
It
no
most certainly is.
possible
And here-
way
and
a
here-
sequel.
and here's
the
why.
only coincidence is the fact that he ends up in South America at the
No.
end of the Ang Lee
No,
one,
no.
and it starts in
Here-
South America
here-
at the other
here-
one. It
here's
has
why.
nothing to do with
Here's
that.
why. Because they don't cover any of the origin story in the Incredible
No, they
Hulk.
don't, and that's the
They
point.
treat it like it's already happened.
That's the point, and that's why
my
it
argument
works
is
so
that it
well.
does.
And it can't, because if even in the shots that they do in a recall sequence to let you know what happened in a brief and very well done quick,
Agreed.
this is what happened.
Absolutely.
It is nothing like the Eric Bana, Ang Lee version of the Hulk. It's nothing like it. It doesn't happen in the same way. It doesn't happen in the same sequence. There is absolutely no connectivity between the two movies. The only connectivity of them is the fact that the Hulk is a character in them, and the fact that Universal produced them. That's all there is.
So we watched that, and then we watched Iron Man 2, and we watched The Consultant, the little short one shot, which you haven't seen. You need to see
I
that
haven't
one.
seen that one yet.
I thought you-
Oh, no, I did. We
Yeah,
watched that.
we watched that
We
one,
did
right?
watch that one.
And
I
so-
watched A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Thor's hammer again the other
I
night.
still think that's weird that the funny thing is on Cap and the consultants.
Well,
is on.
here's the thing. Having gone back, we're going to go back into Marvel now, but having gone back and just watched this, the end of Iron Man 2, when he meets up with Mace Windu. What's his name?
Nick Fury?
Nick Fury, thank you. When he meets up, it just went poof and flew out of there. When he meets up with him at the end, and he's get the report, and he's like, "We recommend Iron Man, but we can't recommend Tony Stark."
Did you pay attention to the background?
He actually says consultant, and he says, "Well, you can't afford my feet."
Yeah,
That almost makes me think that the events of Iron Man 2 might be possibly happening simultaneously with the events.
They have
Did
said
you notice
that.
the monitors in the background of that
I
scene?
didn't notice the monitors
It's
at
the news report from the campus incidents.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it is a slight overlap there.
There is slight overlap.
Oh, okay.
And they have said that in the past that technically
I knew they were close, but I
Yeah.
thought it was
technically the
Iron
end
Man,
of
Hulk,
Iron Man
2,
happens
but-
at about the end of the middle of
that would make sense then, because
The
going back
Incredible
and
Hulk.
watching the consultant, and he refers to him as not the consultant, and then they do the end of Iron Man or the end of Incredible Hulk. So it's like, oh, okay. So we thought maybe there was a little.
Yeah, there's total overlap.
little
That's why it's so
off
hard
there,
to
but-
kind of watch them in order.
But we did that, so we're ready for Thor. So we've got this week to watch Thor and Cap.
Good.
Although we've watched Captain America recently, so we
They're so
might
much
possibly
fun. They're also
forego
much
that one
fun.
just
Yes,
because
they are.
we've seen it recently. But I loved it.
Did you watch it once you got it on Blu-ray?
Oh yeah, I've watched
Oh,
it like
I just
2
picked
or
up
3
Thor
times
tonight
now.
because that's the one I haven't seen most recently because we watched that one in the theater.
I'm really glad they put Thor out before Captain America because there's so much reference to the Odin sphere and the fact that they're following
The
after
treasure of
Yeah,
Odin.
it's
and-
sort of- yeah.
They're,
it's
they're
sort of-
going after the gods. When they now
Yeah,
say gods, you
it helps.
automatically think Asgard.
Right, it does help.
So yeah, that was kind of what we did this week. By the way, the blue Dalek is the strategist, the orange is the scientist, the yellow is eternal,
Whatever that means.
the red is drone, and the white is the Dalek supreme.
All right, there's a
Well, I
bit
had 2
of
Dalek Supremes.
Skittle trivia.
So there's your Doctor
Next
Who
time you eat a
news
bag of
for-
Skittles, you won't look at them the same way again.
But there aren't white Skittles.
On to news.
You can bleach them. Don't eat them.
Keith, what do we got first in news? This one's your item.
Can't recommend.
First
it.
bit of news.
That he brought to the pre-meeting, and we made him look it up again.
Yes.
So he's prepared this time.
It's Doctor Who connected. It's not about Doctor Who.
Great.
Matt
Doesn't have to
Smith is joining a Disney poetry show. He's going to take part in a show aimed at introducing poetry to young audiences. It's a series that twins celebrity poetry recitals with classic Disney animation. He's going to read Once They All Believed in Dragons by Jack Podlutsky, the first U.S. Children's Poet Laureate. And it will air on Disney Junior UK cable channel. And the season is going to begins April 30th.
And let me point out that this isn't like a show where there's like 20 minutes or 30 minutes of poetry being read. What these are,
okay, 'cause I had no idea.
these are little snippets that go between their main shows.
Oh, so these are like the bedtime story
So
ones.
Secret Agent Oso, my child watches all these, so I know them real well. It ends, and then the little poetry thing comes on, and they're usually about a minute long. That's all. And it's usually some famous actor reading famous poetry, and they show clips of classic Disney animation with them that really kind of syncs up or speaks to what they're talking about in the poem, which is really neat.
I bet there will be some Pete's Dragon in this.
Probably. I bet there'll be that Reluctant Dragon, maybe some shots of Maleficent as the dragon in Sleeping Beauty. So yeah, that's what they do. That's
very
the exact
cool.
same thing. They've been doing that here in the United States, and they've had some celebrity guests as well doing those.
Including Jennifer Gardner, Whoopi
Yep.
Goldberg, and Owen Wilson.
Who was the
What's wrong with Owen
I'm
Wilson?
not a big fan of Owen
Oh,
Wilson.
okay.
who was the pink dragon in Sword and Stone?
The pink. Oh, that was
Where was it?
Madam Mim.
Madam Mim. Thank you. I couldn't. It was out there in the
Clips of
ether.
that,
And,
too.
So yeah, there'll be clips of that.
did I say no pink dragons? Did I?
Well, other people taking part in this round of people doing the poetry. Actor Richard Bryars, comedian David Williams, and Downtown Abbey actress Michelle Dockery.
So what I'm hoping is that these will air here in the United States, because those seem to be very British-centric actors and reading. So I'm hoping some of those will play, and we'll be able to hear the Matt Smith one here in the United States. Disney Junior is kind of the 7 a.m. till 11 a.m. segment of the Disney Channel every day. However, they are launching Disney Junior Channel, which will be 24 hours, young pre-K.
Because kids are up at 3 in the morning.
You know, we're in a new world where there are parents that work overnight.
Okay,
we have 24-hour shifts. I thought the same thing. Years ago, I thought, who's got their kid? Because these things started coming on. Nickelodeon has one that's 24 hours. It's called, it was called Noggin at one time. I think it's Nick Jr. now is what they call it, which is kind of weird because Disney copied it. But
I like Bear in the Big Blue House.
Yeah. So, well, that was on Disney. That'll be on Disney Junior when the show launches. You'll have to get cable so you can watch it. And PBS Sprout, which is the PBS pre-K. They all have these 24-hour channels. And I used to sit there and I think, why would these kids be up at like 2 a.m. in the morning watching this stuff? And then somebody kind of put it in perspective. Well, there are a lot of parents that work overnight. Pre-K kids, before they get into kindergarten and start to structure a regular day, sometimes they are forced to be up so that they can go to different daycares or grandparents to be watched and things like that. Or the parents may just have them on their schedules so that they can sleep during the day, so that the children sleep somewhat during the day as well. So that's totally understandable in the 21st century, where we have basically we're all living in a 24-hour day.
So why don't we have 24-hour schools?
Some kids may not sleep well too.
Actually, I think there are schools in some countries that are flirting with that idea of having night school for kids. So I think what you don't want to do with children, because so early in the stages of development, especially when they are going to school, you want to add some sort of structure to it. And if you shift that to a nighttime
that's probably a good
schedule, and I think you screw up alpha rhythms and things like that, because
I know it screws me up.
We're technically we're technically not meant to be up. We're not technically not meant to be up during the night and not meant to be sleeping during the day. So
see, that is the weird, because I mean I've heard that and I've heard that and I've heard that, but I have always been. Like, unless that's been a really long, tough day, about 9:30 is when I start to come alive. That's when my system really perks up and gets ready to go. So
that's why I'm on the perfect schedule right now.
Yeah. Because 8 o'clock in the morning business is
I'll tell
for
you,
the birds.
I may go to bed at 3:30 and get up at 7:30 because I've got kids, so I'm only getting 4 hours of sleep. Now, it's going to kill me probably one of these days because it's not healthy for you either.
Which you kind of did that before you even had kids.
I did. That was the thing is I've always had a bit of insomnia. No, I've always had a bit of insomnia. Well, but now it's
you have to.
That's just it. Now that well, yeah, exactly. But the problem is once I had kids, there was no way to try to cure that insomnia essentially. So when the kids get older and are in school, both of them in school the whole day, then it'll be one of those issues where I can get up and then come home and sleep some more, maybe kind of regulate my sleep schedule a little better. But I'll still be interrupted in the middle because I'll always have to get up and take the kids to school unless they find another job. So,
tied in with that, we are currently scouting applications for a replacement host for Glenn Bartlett when he eventually dies from this rough schedule. So, if you'd like to be considered,
poor eating habits and my poor exercise habits,
send your resume to Traveling the Vortex.
What's next?
What else?
That was quite tangible from Matt Smith reading poetry.
A little bit.
You want to talk about the Dalek?
I'll talk about the Dalek. Doctor Who. A Dalek mysteriously materialized atop the MIT Computer Science building this week. And I'm reading this from IO9. After Caltech pranksters adorned MIT with a runaway TARDIS a while back, which if you hadn't seen was awesome, it was only inevitable that the Daleks would show up. Which is really funny when you think about the episode, which he hasn't seen, so I can't talk about it. But all of a sudden I got it. And up here they did last week atop MIT's Stata Center? Stata? S-T-A-T-A. Stata Center.
I think it's Stata.
With, which is a lightning rod for pranks, and I can see why, because it's a weird building, which houses the university's computer science and artificial intelligence laboratory. And they have photos, and I got to agree with this guy. Look at the photos and see how inconvenient it was to lug the Dalek up there. And wow, I'm still flabbergasted by how. I mean, yes, these are MIT students. This is the creme de la creme. These are smart kids. But how did they get this Dalek up on top of this building? Because it's not like, oh, we put it on the roof. You know, somebody had access to the elevator shaft, and there was a stairwell up. No, I mean, this is like,
It's not that kind of building.
it's not that kind of building. It's on a. If you balance this thing on your chimney at home, you'd have been in a better position to do it than what they managed to do with this building. I'll make a note of it, and we'll get Glenn to post the photos.
Yep.
It probably won't happen, and I'll have to post them later this week.
That's
but
okay.
we'll get them on the website. So there's that.
All right, very good.
Our last bit of news.
Well, we're going to wish happy birthday to Russell T. Davies and Jenna Louise, help me?
Coleman.
All right. Hyphenate. They both celebrated birthdays on the 27th of April. We won't disclose their ages for them because, nobody likes to talk about their age.
I'll give you a hint. Russell is as old as the show that he's worked on.
Exactly as old as the show he's working on. However, the next bit here we can't talk about without disclosing her age, but it is such a monumental birthday, that I think that we should honor her by saying so. Actress Zora Segal celebrated her 100th birthday on the 27th as well, and she becomes the first centenarian Doctor Who alum. Zora appeared alongside the first Doctor, William Hartnell, in 2 stories. She played Shira in the second episode of the 1965 story The Crusade, and she also had a small role playing an attendant in 3 episodes of the 1964 story Marco Polo. So, happy birthday to Zora.
Yes.
And here's to many more. What are you looking for?
I was hearing a buzz.
You
Yeah,
were
happy
hearing a
birthday.
buzz?
I heard a buzz. It sounded like it was a very pronounced electronic buzz. It sounded like coffee percolating. That's what threw me.
Oh,
But I think it may have just been.
see if my phone was...
I don't think that was it. It didn't sound like that kind of buzz. But also, interesting thing that we didn't do this week, but also would have been on the 27th, would have been Mel and I's 6-year anniversary.
Yeah,
we kind of spaced it off and forgot about it. So, apparently 6 years is that magic number where you stop counting.
Well, happy anniversary.
Well,
to you.
thanks.
Late. Belated.
As I explained, we don't actually know that that's the date. We just kind of arbitrarily picked one because we can't remember.
Yeah. Sometimes that happens.
I'm a Weird Al fan. 27 is his favorite number. It's my favorite number. I thought April 27th because we knew it was sometime between March and May. Okay, we'll split the difference.
That works.
So,
All right. Well, let's move along to feedback.
oh, the pressure. You guys are both staring at me now. I was all set. Now I'm not sure I want to do it.
We have to now. The fans expect it. Or the listeners expect it. I don't know if Doctor Who fans expect it, but our listeners expect
What
it
would
now.
William Shatner do in this situation? Feedback. Feedback. We've got some feedback. Yeah. That's the Shatner version.
That
of
was
it.
good. I like it. That's great. That was great.
That was great. Yes.
It makes me excited to listen to your side trip when you talk about the Star Trek universe.
Oh, we'll have to use that. Yes, for those of you that are wondering, I haven't forgotten about your requests. I am still percolating on my Star Trek thing.
And
So-
I know that he is because last time we recorded, he recruited me to help him record the side trip. So
I instead of
I
trying
won't be joining in, but I'll be.
I decided I was going to torture you all with the sound of my own voice because I love hearing myself talk so much that I would record it instead of typing it. So we'll get to that.
So
at some
it
point.
Probably
might
be
be-
shorter
end up being a
talking
side
it than
trip.
typing
I think
it.
so. Yeah, that was really the daunting thing. I'm not going to put out an hour worth of Star Trek talk. I could, but I'm not going to.
No, he won't because I'll be there on the
57
recording.
minutes.
All right. Well, who's our first bit of feedback?
Our first bit comes from Facebook.
A little bit non-traditional here.
Non-traditional. James Hans commented on our most recent episode.
Who's
and he's-
James Hans?
James
Remind
Hans
the listener.
is the artist that Odd Duck Phil brought up last week.
That's right.
Who does the... I always get this backwards. Wookie the Chew?
Wookiee the Chew,
Hey, I did it right that time.
among other cute
A lot of
things.
He does
really
a lot of
cool.
Muppet stuff, too.
Yeah, he does.
Really, really cool.
He commented saying, "Thanks for the mention, guys. Very much appreciated. Also, thanks to Doug, I think it was, the substitute teacher that sent you the link. Really glad you like my doodles. Glad I found you guys. Great show."
Well, thanks for the comment, James.
Thanks, James.
And James, it's Doug. I mean, it's Duck, not Doug.
Odd Duck.
Duck.
Phil.
We call him Odd Duck. It's a long story. Go back into the archives to find out why. But we call him Odd Duck Phil. So
Phil got a
He
big...
calls himself Odd Duck.
He calls himself,
does.
well, after
But
I called him that,
we
he appropriated
we
it.
understand the confusion there. So
Phil got a big kick out of that. He says, Doug? I'm Doug now? And then he said it out loud. Odd Doug Phil. Yeah, it works.
our next bit of feedback comes from
Holly.
Holly writes, "Hey guys, great last podcast. I first came to Doctor Who through New Who, and I've been slowly trying to catch older Doctor Who episodes when I can. Love the idea about having an episode in the future with just questions and you answering them. Which, if you remember last week, we had specifically we speculated that Holly probably came to Who from New Who, and that she was catching up, and so we confirmed that. And then we said maybe we'll do a feedback special one day down the road, and she says that's a good idea. Got a few questions rattling around in my head. I'll be typing them up and saving them to send in later. Going back quickly to the War Games and the War Chief, I have to admit, when I saw him step out and seeing his hairstyle and mustache, my mind instantly screamed to me, Master! So, Sean, you're not the only one. That's right. I'm not the only one. You heard it here.
Yeah, there are Tiggers.
There's more than one Tigger?
Oh, no, Tiggers are the only one. That's the wonderful thing about
Tiggers.
Tiggers are wonderful
Do we
things.
have to go through the whole thing?
Tops are made out of rubber. The
The
bottoms
bottom's
are made out of springs.
The bouncy, trouncy, fun. But the most wonderful thing about
wonderful thing about Tiggers
I'm
is I'm the
one.
only one.
I figured you had kids, so you would know
I
if,
knew that. I just had
if
it
more
backwards in my
came
mind.
around.
No more have come around. Although they did finally introduce us to a heffalump.
Oh,
Which I
yeah.
thought was
He
weird.
had his own movie.
Yeah.
That's
He's
disturbing.
in some of the
It's a kid. It's
episodes,
like a
though.
baby heffalump.
Yeah,
but
he's
still.
cute, but the problem is heffalumps and woozles came from a misunderstanding of those words by Winnie the Pooh and Piglet.
Yes.
And then suddenly
We're ranging all
heffalumps...
over the place.
You're right, go on.
No, you've started.
You
Now
can't finish.
keep going. You've
But
got to
then
finish it.
heffalumps, when you substantiate that in the Winnie the Pooh universe...
Because the Winnie the Pooh universe has been so consistent. It's the imagination of a little boy. It can be anything we want it to
Hey,
be.
heffalumps were not canon until this new movie came out. They totally had to retcon them.
They did make an appearance in one of the movies before the Heffalump movie.
They did, but it was in a dream
sequence.
sequence.
Yeah,
It was Pooh and Piglet's unfounded, irrational fear
Yeah.
of the unknown.
I mean, that would be like, we get a scary episode of Doctor Who and he encounters a heffalump. I mean, could happen. Neil Gaiman could write it.
Way to bring it back to Doctor Who, son.
I'm stretching tonight. Arc of Infinity. What can I say? This was one of the very first old series Doctor Who episodes that I saw, and I really enjoyed it. So going back and rewatching it was a treat. The Flash Gordon-y music really stands out in some places. We get a mention again of the state of temporal grace and Nyssa commenting about the Doctor needing to do some repairs on the TARDIS. The Doctor and Nyssa are back on Gallifrey. Kind of like the different color dress uniforms the Time Lords have when they're in their meetings. Although I think with all of them wearing red like they did in the End of Time was nice too. It was really cool to see Colin Baker before he became the Doctor. He can play the semi-baddie pretty well. The Time Lords are up to their old tricks again, wanting to be rid of the Doctor. With friends like these, who really needs enemies? I don't blame the Doctor for not wanting to go back to Gallifrey unless absolutely necessary. Don't call me, I'll call you. Omega looks like he stepped out of a Power Rangers episode. But still very cool makeup for the time that he was filmed in. We have a creepy underground vault. Nothing good can come from that. Stuart, your feelings were right about that. I kind of laughed out loud when the Doctor entered the code to enter the chamber the Time Lords were in. I would have thought that since he fled his since he fled his presidency, they would have changed the locks, as it were. I was a little shocked near the end of the episode 4 when Omega revealed himself from behind the mask to see a mirror image of the Doctor. Plus, lose a guy that's turning green and trying to take over the world, just follow the sounds of the screaming voices. You'll find him, no problem. It's nice to see Tegan meet up with Nyssa and the Doctor yet again, and her being more than willing to tag along again as she has no longer a job. Not so sure how the Doctor feels about that from the look on his face. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this episode. Keep up the great work. Holly from Wisconsin. And as always, Holly, thank you so much for writing in.
We will touch on a lot of that, but I wanted to mention something. I didn't think the music was that Flash Gordon. I didn't hear any Queen in this episode.
I think it's a lot of the whee,
yeah,
those kind of things. And I would have to agree that it sounds very 80s sci-fi.
Maybe that's
Cheesy
why I
sci-fi.
like this.
What?
Nothing.
It is cheesy sci-fi.
It is cheesy. You said cheesy, and I immediately tried to rise to Flash Gordon's defense and went,
No,
he's right.
Even
That's
fans
why
have to
we
admit
love
it's
it.
cheesy
That's
sci-fi.
exactly why I
That's
love
why
it.
we love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next up, Chrissy.
Chrissy writes now. I got to say that her header for this
She stole
email
my open.
was, if it changes into a pineapple, I know we're in trouble. Dear I sure want me to read it. Dear Vortex boys, it's a good thing that I was listening to last week's podcast at home, because if I'd have been driving, I probably would have wrecked from laughing so hard. You three were so hilarious. We do have a Kohl's and a Bed Bath & Beyond in Utah. Thank you very much. We may be in the middle of nowhere, but we are allowed to have nice things. And I fully intend on sending Keith and Sarah a gift even before Sean mentioned it, so there.
Chrissy, you don't have to.
I'm going to chime in on some of the wedding advice here, even though I know pretty much nothing about weddings and nobody's asked me to. It's perfectly okay to put the "we are registered at," quote, cards in the invitation. Otherwise, you end up with 20 toasters and nothing you actually needed/wanted. Personally, I would rather get a newlywed couple something they need instead of wandering around the store with no clue what to get them. I live and die by those wedding registries. As a female, I do have a story and a bit of an opinion about China. My mom didn't get a nice set of china until she and my dad had been married for about 15 years or so. It was actually a Christmas present from my dad, so I think it meant more than a bunch of random people chipping in for a gravy boat and 2 bowls. And yes, we only use it at Thanksgiving and Christmas. But it makes my mom feel good about making a nice dinner for the holidays and what have you. For myself, I'm not much of a cook, and I probably wouldn't care. However, we do have the antique silverware set that's been in the family for years, and that's more of a sentimental thing anyway. Coincidentally, it only gets used at, wait for it, Thanksgiving and Christmas. Bottom line, get things you absolutely need and hold off on getting the nicer stuff for later when you can afford it. Here. I agree.
Yes, I agree.
100% agree.
Wow. Scientists have invented a sonic screwdriver. Sort of. So thrilling. Doctor Who needs to come back, like now. We're desperate for news.
You can tell we're reaching a little bit.
And we wouldn't even have had that. I wrote it down because Keith wasn't even going to talk about it.
Well,
Because I was so not impressed
it
by
was a rubber washer levitator.
But it's science being influenced by Doctor Who. For like 45 years, we've had, hey, they're making a tricorder. Hey, they're making a communicator. Hey, they're making... Star Trek gets all of this credit for influencing scientific discovery.
You know why?
Finally, finally, Doctor Who gets its moment.
I'll
Do
be
you know
much more
why?
impressed when they make something
Because their stuff
transcendentally.
works.
Because the communicator is a communicator. The tricorder is a tricorder. This is a rubber washer levitator.
All right, I'll give you that. Well then,
If scientists made a box that would fit inside another box but still be the same size and you could do this with it, I'd be impressed.
That would be awesome.
I'd buy 3 of them. Just to have.
And you wouldn't need 3, but you'd still buy 3.
I'd still buy 3 of them.
All right. She
That's
goes on
down
to
the
say,
road, though, because first you have to do the practicality of it, and that's before you get into the markability of it.
Can I go on?
Okay.
Well then, reviews. Arc of Infinity. This is a story that I enjoy every time I see it. I realize that it has problems. For instance, the 10-minute chase through Amsterdam at the end. But no matter what shortcomings I see in it, I still love it. I love the beginning where Nyssa and the Doctor traveling in the TARDIS, and I think that a season with just Nyssa and the Doctor would have been nice. Nyssa gets some pretty cool moments, too, like shooting at the Gallifreyan Guard during one of the many chase scenes, and when she tries to convince the Time Lord Council to let the Doctor go. And, of course, there's her big Jack Bauer moment when she barges into the execution chamber and holds the Council at gunpoint in a last-ditch effort to save the Doctor. Too bad it doesn't work, but it's a really great scene. Also, I love when she and the Doctor are providing their own back-and-forth technical explanations about why the TARDIS is acting funny, etc., and it's such a welcome change from having the companions asking, "What's that, Doctor?" all the time, and the Doctor having to explain everything. Plus, when the Doctor is in trouble, Nyssa is proactive enough to seek out the help from Damon, and they can try to find out what's going on with the Doctor's bioscan. I really feel like Nyssa and the Doctor were on equal footing, and they made a great team. There are echoes of the Doctor and Romana here, but Nissa's different enough to be her own separate and unique character. After a complete season of being overshadowed by Tegan and Adric, Nyssa finally gets her chance to shine here, and she does it well. But then, darn it all if Tegan comes back and has to take over the spotlight from Nyssa. I still don't quite understand why Omega had to show up in Amsterdam of all places. The only real explanation I've been able to find is J&T wanted to take the whole cast and crew on vacation.
He was very big on once a season, let's go do some location shooting somewhere. And I'm sure Amsterdam was probably close enough that...
I'm sure.
Fit on a smaller budget.
Yeah.
Not
it
a lot of
wasn't
money to go to
Spain.
Amsterdam.
He knew he was going to Spain the following year. So.
What else to say about Arc of Infinity? I enjoy the action and the unexpected appearance of not the Sixth Doctor. The Time Lords on the Council are always infuriating, though. It's like, one of our Time Lords is in danger. Oh, let's execute him and save us the trouble of finding out what's really going on. This story is a shining example of why the Doctor left Gallifrey in the first place. But I do like the Gallifrey scenes, even if they look more like a futuristic version of the 80s with random coffee shops in the hallways. I guess you never know when you're in the middle of chasing down a rogue Time Lord and need to stop for a nice cup of Starbucks. This whole story is fairly well executed and fun to watch. Now that I think of it, I think it's the one story that I own that gets rewatched the most. Omega. Wow. I wasn't expecting that. The story could have been done... Oh, is she talking about the Big Finish? Wait a minute. She's talking about Big Finish here. Okay. Omega. Wow, I wasn't expecting that. The story could only be done in audio format in order to keep the surprise twist. Well, a surprise. If you think about it, the Doctor doesn't actually show up until the end of the third part because the Doctor in the story was actually a voice in Omega's head. It's an interesting spin for an audio story to take because all you have is voices, so you don't know that the Doctor isn't really the actual Doctor. I think there's one other Eighth Doctor story where the main characters aren't playing their usual characters, but you don't know that until the end. I can't remember which audio that is, but that's probably a good thing since I would spoil it. Anyways, this is a really good Big Finish story and one that I enjoy over and over. I had to listen to it more than once to fully understand what was going on. Also, it would be cool to have an Omega action figure that says, "I'm Omega, and I will have my revenge," in that squeaky voice from the toy from the souvenir shop that the souvenir shop did. Chrissy. Very good, Chrissy. And
thank you very
also,
much,
we're going to talk about many of the points that you brought up as well. So
Yes.
I don't think there's much more we can say.
Well, let's move on to our reviews.
Reviews.
Now, Glenn, you want to discuss Three Doctors a little bit first.
I'll tell you what. We're not going to do a review of the Three Doctors, but I don't think we can get away with talking about these two stories without recounting some things from the Three Doctors. However, I am amenable to starting our Arc of Infinity discussion and flashing back and discussing those things as we go. That's all right with you guys.
That's how it was in the show notes, but I'm fine with it.
I know. I wrote 3 Doctors. We're reviewing 3 Doctors, but we're not.
I'm without opinion, so.
Arc of Infinity! Traveling with Nyssa in the TARDIS, the Doctor is attacked by a malign entity, and being of pure antimatter seeking to cross the dimensions. Although the invader is successfully repelled, the TARDIS is immediately recalled to Gallifrey, where the High Council of the Time Lords sentenced the Doctor to be executed to prevent any further attempts at bonding. It seems there is a traitor on Gallifrey, and what links the renegade to the disappearance of Tegan's cousin in Amsterdam? 2 fates intertwined must battle for the future of the entire universe.
Dun dun dun!
I really enjoyed this story.
I'm glad that you bought it. It always makes the purchase go a little smoother down when you're like, yeah, that one was pretty good.
Yeah.
I had to buy this one, too, because I wasn't going to make it to Friday Night Who. It had been a long time since I'd seen this one.
This was one of the ones I picked up along with Time Meddler to help out with the Friday Night Who.
Hang on just a second. I got to throw a plug in here. To entertain. We're pimping your product really hardcore on our show. We've got Friday Night Who going on. We're encouraging people to go out and buy DVDs. You really ought to get us some kickbacks. You really ought to be sending us some free review copies of this stuff. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, go ahead.
And I am glad this is in my collection.
You have, what, 4 now?
5.
Classics, not
5 classics.
Obviously, you own all the. Well, you know, you don't.
I don't own all of.
You own all the Matt Smith stuff.
Yeah. Actually, no, I technically don't. Sarah owns season 5. I don't own my own copy of season 5. I want to get that on Blu-ray eventually. So.
Gotcha.
August 18th, it'll be his. but all his stuff will be hers. So.
Actually, August 18th, it'll all be hers.
Yeah.
That's true.
But I'm not jaded.
What's yours is hers, and what's hers is hers.
That's right. But I have to preface my discussion of this with the fact that I listened to The Big Finish first.
Don't!
And I think that really made me enjoy this story even more.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Partially because I knew what was coming. And it made me kind of... I can't wait to see how they're going to do this.
It gives you a real backstory feel. It's like...
It does.
It's almost like if you listen to Omega... I'm kind of coming at it this way as well. Because I haven't seen this since I was a kid. I remembered things about it. I remembered Omega was in it. I remembered that it took place in Amsterdam. I remembered Tegan returning, and I remembered the reveal of the Doctor's face, and I remembered that Colin Baker was a Gallifreyan guard, although I had forgotten how big of a role it was. So I understand where he's coming from because I listened to Omega earlier in the week and then watched Arc of Infinity this weekend. So I know where he's coming from.
And there are things I could have done without. There was a lot of the Amsterdam stuff that felt unnecessary. And really the only reason it's there is to bring Tegan back on. That's the only reason they wrote the Amsterdam storyline, is to bring her back onto the TARDIS.
Well, clearly the only reason they wrote the Amsterdam storyline was so that they could go on vacation.
So they could go on vacation and bring Tegan back.
Yeah.
So I could have done with... Every time we went to Amsterdam, I was...
Let's put it this way. There had to be an Earth link. It didn't have to be Amsterdam.
I don't think...
But there had to be an Earth link in order for them to... Well, no. Not in... Well... Now that you say that, I think that it puts a little more in perspective that the Earth was threatened. But I would agree with what you're saying. I think you're singling Amsterdam out. The only reason they had to be on Earth was to bring Tegan back in some way. Because they could have been in Australia, they could have been in the UK, they could have been anywhere. I
would have been thoroughly happy if they weren't even on Earth this entire story, because everything interesting's happening is going on on Gallifrey.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And the reveal that Michael Go's character is the one behind it.
I'd totally forgotten that Alfred was in this.
A.K.A. the Celestial Toy Maker, who we just lost not that long ago.
Yeah, he passed away last year.
I didn't really... I fully expected Castellan to be the one in league with Omega.
I only knew it wasn't Castellan because I had seen the Five Doctors before I'd seen
that's
this.
true.
That was my rationale. Is the same thing. It's like, well, it's not this guy because I remember this.
It's not Castellan. It's not Lady. I'm not going to remember her name.
Me neither.
But it wasn't her.
It's
and it
not
wasn't
the Lord
Marissa.
President, yeah.
Is it the same? Is it supposed to be the same woman? Is it Chancellor Flavia?
Flavia. It is Flavia.
It is Flavia?
I may be wrong, but I think it was even the same actress. Both
You're gonna make me look
both
it
of them
up
were.
now.
Both of them were.
Barusa wasn't.
Barusa was not.
Barusa was not.
But
Castellan?
her and
Castellan,
Castellan
I
both
think,
were
was.
the same actor.
I came at it from the same perspective. It was like, well, I know it's not Barusa because he turns out to be the bad guy later in Five
Right.
Doctors, and
Yeah,
I know
I
it's
knew it
not
wasn't him.
Castellan because he's suspected of being the bad guy later, but that's only because they suspected him of being a bad guy. And this one, it turns out he wasn't.
Right.
And it turns out he wasn't then either. He's just a disliked little man.
Patsy last time, or in Five Doctors.
And there's a lot of nice callbacks to the Three Doctors in this.
There were a lot of them.
And I think even more so in Omega, the Big Finish story.
Yeah. Yes. Agreed.
And even, despite Omega being a direct sequel, I think there was more tie-in to Three Doctors than this one.
I disagree with
major plot
that.
points, but there are more references, maybe.
Yeah, I think that the thing is the mythos of Omega, the background, the history of Omega, in the audio Omega, is steeped in what they've mostly
what they set up,
presented and
Three
set up in the
Doctors.
Three
Yeah.
Doctors. I would agree. However,
course, they have to
I
cloak
just
that
I
for
think
the
it's I
setup.
think it's a well balanced of both. I don't think there's more of one or the other.
Maybe I need
because,
to go back and re-listen. And
because
hear
they
these.
Different
talk about
character, different actress, by the way.
it is a different actress. Okay.
And character.
Oh, it is a different character. Okay, so I remembered wrong, but I was thinking it was the same gal.
Phala versus Flavia, but
Okay. And so I'm glad you looked it up because Chrissy would have called us out next week. So I think they strike a balance because there's a lot of mention of Amsterdam, what happened, how he got there, how he came up with. Well, I'm getting ahead of ourselves and we're doing Omega here, but how he met up with what's her name and anyway, yeah. So.
Sean, what'd you think?
there are parts of this story that I really, 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 really enjoyed. Kind of with you. Everything on Gallifrey was enjoyable, despite the fact that it's more of the same, that we've got the Time Lords acting like
More reason to hate the Time Lords.
Time Lords. And you know, there's a traitor amongst us. You know what? How many times have we been to Gallifrey? There's always a traitor amongst us.
You're just a traitorous bunch.
Yeah, I mean, whether you go to, you look at Deadly Assassin, there was a traitor in there, and he was working with the bad guy. You go to Invasion of Time, well, it turned out the traitor was the Doctor, but I mean, he was in there working with him. Arc of Infinity, 5 Doctors. There's always a bad apple on Gallifrey, and it's like, no wonder they talk about this hands-off approach, and, you know, we were stagnant. Well, no wonder, because all the...
Oh, and you can almost see how they got to that point in the Time War.
You have two options if you're a Time Lord. You can either become a traitor, or you can be a renegade and leave.
Well, I guess you got 3.
No, because
or you can become a part of the Dogma.
All of the established Dogma people, they're going to become traitors eventually. There's just a larger pool of people in waiting. But all of that stuff I loved. I agree with you. I didn't think the Amsterdam stuff was all that exciting. I mean, from the standpoint, we've got... you pointed out the American Werewolf in Paris, or American Werewolf in Amsterdam.
Actually, I think Blake pointed that out.
Blake.
Yeah.
That we've got these two guys hitchhiking their way across Europe, and let's spend the night in the creepy crypt. Really? That's rule 1. Don't do that. I don't go outside unless I have to, and even I know that one. You know,
I quite frankly,
you
I
have
thought
a hostel waiting for you with a bed and breakfast, and your name's on a list. You're going to spend the night in a creepy what?
To save how much
aside
money?
from that, but if there isn't a hostel and you don't, they weren't actually staying inside the crypt. They were staying inside the maintenance tunnel, and. Yeah, if you live in the Doctor Who realm, you don't expect anything can happen. But I don't believe in ghosts.
Tunnel,
I don't believe in
sewer.
I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in demons. I don't believe in that kind of thing. I think it was a brilliant idea. You're out of the rain. It might be cold and damp, depending on what season it is. But I thought, hey, Yeah, no, who's going to come down there and check and find you? You know, I mean, you can't sleep at a park bench somewhere because you're going to get run off by a cop. Yeah, down there, I thought it was a great idea. Now, in the realm of Doctor Who, it was a horrible idea because, of course, you're going to be...
Just anything on television is a bad idea.
Exactly, it's a bad idea.
Horror
on TV,
movies, Doctor Who, or Scooby-Doo. You don't sleep in the crypt. Just bad things happen.
Yes.
So, and quite honestly, neither one of these characters I cared for.
No.
Colin and
Well, the one
Stuart,
bites it, or you think one bites it so early.
Yeah. Him and his neon green socks.
That's very 80s.
Very 80s. So I didn't care much for that. And then Tegan reappears, and I'll be honest, I hate to fall down on the side of people who rant and scream at Tegan, because I've always tried to like Tegan. Why? Because Tegan's in the Five Doctors, which is one of those that I watched early in the Peter Davison era, and one that I've watched repeatedly in the Peter Davison era. So Tegan's always there. And it's like, yay, there's Tegan. And the more Tegan I watch, the more I dislike her. I think it was Chrissy who said, they were going for a strong-willed female character and just completely overshot that and went straight into... And even in this, she's very tempered.
This was the best I've seen of
Yeah,
Tegan.
well, that's just it. It's because she's on the outside looking in.
She's better off when she's not with the Doctor.
I've seen a lot better Tegan than this. I'm
Really?
sorry. Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying there. The more I watch Tegan, the more I dislike Tegan. And I especially now wish, like as Chrissy pointed out, I wish that Nyssa and the Doctor could have had more adventures together. And I think, fortunately, I haven't heard any of them, but I suspect there's some big finish out there now that probably takes place between Tegan leaving and Tegan returning.
There are.
Yeah.
And that's very fortunate.
Which is interesting, because I'd mentioned to Keith that, some of those ones that were coming up, and that I didn't know when they would fall, but I knew they had to fall in there somewhere. So now I'm glad to know that it would be right before this story is where all of those stories would fall. Now, there's other big finish audios that are just the Doctor and Turlough. And I'm not sure, I guess those would have to fall after
Well,
the Dalek one.
Remembrance, or not Remembrance.
Whichever they are Dalek stories it is.
Revelation.
Resurrection.
There are 3 of them, aren't there?
Yeah. So
Resurrection of the Dalek.
all of the stuff.
keep trying, you'll eventually get there.
All of the stuff in the TARDIS with Nyssa and the Doctor was great, and I kind of feel the same way. I don't think Nyssa was given a fair shot. I think she's a very good companion. I think she does have that equal footing status because she's a brain and because she can kind of keep up and she can fly the TARDIS. I mean, she's got these abilities that definitely put her in the more cool than some companion column. But there are other things with Nyssa that just feel very unfortunate, and she's got this almost Zoe quality about her, where she's from a technologically savvy race and she's palling around with the Doctor, but she doesn't have the same charm about her that I think Zoe has. Maybe charm's not the right word, but she's like that middle child who...
Now watch it. I'm friends with Sarah Sutton on Facebook.
I like Sarah Sutton. but Nyssa, as a character, is kind of like that middle child who just doesn't quite fit into either one of the age groups of the 2 children on either side of her. She just always seems to feel a little left out. And I felt that way when it's just her and the Doctor, because I've listened to some of the Big Finish stuff with just the 2 of them, and I felt that way about this. And I felt that way when she had Tegan and Turlough on either side of her.
Maybe it was they wanted to write a similar character to somebody like Zoe or Romana, but didn't quite know how to go about it without replicating those 2 characters.
It could be that, and obviously you haven't got to it yet.
Although
her
long
origin,
enough, I think they could have done a bit more like...
Yeah, her origin, there's some tragedy in her backstory as to why she comes to travel with the Doctor, and I think that's important. But there are moments of greatness for her character in this particular story. There are things that she does that, and her loyalty's never been in question with me. She will follow the Doctor.
Totally agree.
She may argue with him, but she'll follow blindly into a black hole. If he said, "Come on, let's go," she would go. She would say, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" first, but she would go.
And arguments with the Doctor always turn out to be just differences of opinion. We agree to disagree type things. It's just they're always just nice conversations.
Well, depending on which companion you're dealing with.
Well, I met with Nyssa, between Nyssa and the Doctor.
I especially, and I agree with Chrissy 100%. I loved the bit at the beginning where she's talking about, okay, there, we fixed that, and she's like, all right, well, what about this? And he's like, well, we'll get around to it.
Yeah.
That's something that I've always felt about Peter Davidson's Doctor. other doctors are quite content to putter in the TARDIS. Matt Smith putters. He loves taking that console apart and jury-rigging it and playing with things.
Yeah,
Tom
really
Baker
does.
did a lot of that. I mean, other doctors are very... Pertwee took it completely apart and put it back together. And
that was for different reasons.
It's out
you
of
know,
necessity.
Somebody commented that, if he was able to fly it better after he took it apart and put it back together because he understood what he does. I'm kind of inclined to believe that he had a bag of parts left over, and now it works. So there's that. But Peter Davison's Doctor never seemed to like it. He always had to do it. The TARDIS was kind of getting to that really needing to get to the 40,000 light year checkup. And he didn't want to take it in, and he kept repairing it out of necessity. He kept repairing it because he had to get where he was going, or
And
because
only
it
to
was
get
important.
by.
Only to get by. It was only enough to get by. He never really liked getting in there and cranking the hood up. I mean, he just wasn't a fix-it-yourself kind of doctor. And so I loved the fact that this is on him about, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we do this? And what about that state of temporal grace? It was like, yes!
Yeah, I had totally forgotten about that because we've talked about the state of temporal grace and the failure of the reemergence of it since, was it Earthshock when he says that...
Yeah, that was a pretty...
Because that was the previous story,
So,
wasn't it?
I mean,
or no, it was
it's-
Time Flight, but Earthshock would have been the one before
right.
it.
The state of temporal grace. In fact, I had totally forgotten this, and we probably talked about it when we reviewed Let's Kill Hitler. But there's that great moment where they all come running out of the TARDIS after they've landed in Berlin, and Mel's is shouting. He's shouting, "You shot my you shot my console! He's just because there's this fire going on in there, and so they're having to get out because there's all this noxious gas." And she says, "I thought you said there was a state of temporal grace," and something to that effect. And he says, "I lied," or something. And I was like, "Oh yeah, okay." They've even carried this on into
and they touched on that too,
bluff.
because when she says, "What about the state of temporal grace?" you said, he kind of blows it off like, "Yeah, maybe not." I mean, like he maybe he was lying at the time about it.
Yes.
I think it's always been a bluff.
Maybe it's just that it's been broken and he's never fixed it. I'm inclined to believe
Could
that
be
it's always
both
been.
ways.
Yeah.
Maybe they do have a element of that causes temporal grace. However, his particular TARDIS isn't ever.
Because I don't remember when he brought it up to Eldred in Hand of Fear, and Tom Baker said it. Did Eldred try? Did she go with the green eyes and try to do something to him? And Tom Baker laughed or not? Did she just take it at face value that it wouldn't work? I can't remember.
I think she
either.
took it at face value that it wouldn't work.
So either way, that was a great moment. And there was a lot of that. Okay, here's where I'm going to start to, and maybe this is nitpicky, I don't know. Okay, we're under attack by an antimatter creature, something from the antimatter universe, and it's trying to bond with you. Okay, let me go back through my diary and figure out how many of those we've run up against. Omega. Well, that's probably who it is. I mean, the Doctor spends 3/4 of this entire story arc in this fog, like he's unsure of who the villain is. Now, I've never seen this story before, and I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, "It's Omega! He's come back for you!" And let's go to Gallifrey and find out what happened. It's Omega! And the Time Lord's like, "Well, we're not sure what's happening."
Well, no.
It's the same
No,
MO.
wait. It may be, and the Doctor maybe should have cottoned onto that a little sooner.
The Time
But
Lords.
the Time
not
Lords, I mean,
necessarily.
they are quite
Dense.
arrogant. No, but they're quite arrogant, and they can't
With those
see
big headdresses.
They can't see the forest for the trees a lot of times. And
Yeah,
that
they
is
can't.
that is their character, and so I can be forgiving of them. The one thing that bothered me the most is they kept talking about antimatter. Well, we know where antimatter comes from, so there should have been some suspicion that it could be Omega coming over. However, if I remember right in the Three Doctors, you don't get the impression that they thought he was trapped there, that they left him trapped there. You get the impression that he basically, because he, the recorder had the stasis of regular matter. It was the only thing that wasn't converted to antimatter when the Three Doctors, when everybody was pulled into the antimatter universe. It was the only item that was, remember, it was jammed in the TARDIS console, and so it wasn't converted to antimatter. It was the only matter. And so that was the ruse, as they brought it out as though it was some sort of helpful device that was going to help him transfer. And when it activates or touches the the antimatter universe, it explodes. So I can understand where the Doctor believes that there's been this reaction and Omega's dead, essentially. He's not just trapped on the other side, he's dead. And so I think that lends to the fact that...
How many villains at this point in his life has the Doctor seen come back from inseemable death?
But you can't do that, because then that would just mess up every time that Davros coming back would have been, well, of course he came back. I mean, the Doctor would be every time somebody came back and said, well, of course he came back, because they always do. You can't go there with that. I'm sorry. I think you're playing a little fast and loose and tongue-in-cheek here.
I think
I'm very forgiving of this.
The Doctor was not present.
I'm very forgiving of this because of the fact that it happens frequently.
When the Doctor sees someone killed, or as in Genesis of the Daleks, when even though he didn't see it, when it's implied, I guess he was watching it on the monitor, and it's shown to us that Davros got blasted by Dalek weaponry. Okay, you're dead. And then having that come back is kind of a surprise, and quite honestly a cheat, because it shouldn't have happened.
Right.
But we'll allow it. But when he's not present for this, because they escaped, they went back through the thing before the explosion went off.
Well, that's right. We see that like time tunnel type thing where you see the explosion at the center
that Omega's dead. But I'm sorry, that still means he's of all of the people, he's been to the antimatter universe. He's probably one of... Well, him and the Brigadier, that's about it. And the fisherman. Or the game hunter, whatever he was that got brought back.
Well, all of them went to...
Well, yeah, okay. You know what I'm saying.
Joe Grant was there.
Of the people in this story, the Doctor's the only person.
Sergeant Benton was there.
Less people have gone to the antimatter universe and returned than have walked on the surface of the moon. He should have cued into it.
True. No, I disagree. And I'm a little more forgiving because of the defense that I gave. So
I think it would have been great to see the Omega headdress return.
Yeah,
instead of the walnut head. I understand the need.
That's one of the things that
because as storytelling,
you obviously would have known who it was.
Yeah, you would have known, and you want that reveal of who it is in episode 3.
I'll tell you what I wanted. I wanted an explanation as to why he was wearing this getup. I wanted an explanation that this was somehow. And maybe it does, but somehow this was aiding in the transference of bringing him back, materializing him essentially in this universe. If they'd have just simply said that, I could have forgiven the Power Ranger look of it. I needed that.
But it's there just as a disguise.
That being said, you know me, when I like a story, I find a lot of forgivenesses in it, and I always rationalize that that's probably why he needed that particular outfit. But yeah, if they would have shown us the Omega headdress and robes and everything, we totally would have gone,
It's not like Michael Gove's character didn't know it was Omega the entire time.
Right, exactly. He knew.
It's not like he was even trying to hide who he was.
Counselor Hedden.
Which he was fantastic in the story.
Let's talk about Michael Gow. He was
great.
Just... I tweeted it out on Friday that this story is elevated to such a higher plane just by the presence of Michael Gow. Not that it's a bad story, because it isn't, but just him being in it is like...
And I like that they disguised his voice as well, because that could have easily given a lot away, because he has a very distinct voice.
He's a very distinct voice.
And that could have totally ruined this whole thing. And so they were very smart to put the voice synthesizer on it and change it a bit. So, that's... I'm sorry. I absolutely love this story, and I'd forgotten how much I love this story. This is one of my favorite Peter Davison stories. It is so much fun. It is so good. Aside from the fact that they felt like they had to bring Tegan back, I love the fact... I love the actor that played Omega in this one.
Aside from half the
He
story.
was fantastic, and he returns as Omega in Omega.
And of course, having listened to Omega...
You totally recognize
I
the voice
recognize
immediately.
the voice immediately.
Absolutely.
I'm like, oh, yeah, that's him.
So I love that. I love the fact that...
he's dead now.
There's this nice thing
Ian
going...
Collier.
There's this nice thing going that Omega tries... He's in this antimatter universe. Whether it's... I mean... The nice thing about the mythos of Omega is you don't know the real story. No one. It's so far removed now, and Omega is the best example of this. It's so far removed as to what really happened that you've got all these different versions of what happened in that star when they were igniting that collapsing that star in order to create the black hole in order to capture the ability to time travel. And so this guy, for some circumstance, nefarious or not, ends up trapped in the antimatter universe. And it's only by his own will that everything surrounding him alone in that universe exists.
What a statement of his character.
And I love that concept. And I love the idea that you're in this antimatter universe alone for so long that you've gone insane. That you're not only are you this megalomaniac, but now you're this insane megalomaniac. And so I love that idea. And I love the idea of I'm so getting out of here. And he makes the attempt the first time in the Three Doctors. That's the reason why he brings the Third Doctor into the antimatter universe, is because he's going to utilize him to get back over to the other side. And, you know, wreak vengeance on the on the
I will have my revenge.
So we have this whole thing, and luckily we have the three incarnations of the Doctor and the Brig and the Sergeant and Joe Grant. We're able to thwart that. We're able to get out of the universe, and essentially we think he's gone. We think we've dispatched of Omega. And we have no problem. And so now we have Omega, who is not dispatched, and he again is making an attempt, and he's again using the Doctor by extracting his biodata. And I absolutely love that idea. I think that's fantastic.
Oh, it's so cool.
I think of all the people to go after, the one guy who, and this is a little bit of foreshadowing without having foreshadowing, because until you listen to Omega, you don't realize maybe so much why he chooses the Doctor, other than the fact that I think he feels a bit slighted from the Doctor in his first... And you kind of get that feel from here. But he's got to use the Doctor because he's this, renegade. He's already been at one with the Matrix. He's already been in the Matrix, so it makes, perfect sense in order to use him as a bridge as well. And so the idea of using his bio data in order to basically materialize himself in this world and come back and seek revenge on the Time Lords again. I love that. I love the whole idea of Arc Infinity. Now, there are some downfalls with it. There is the very painfully long chase scene at the end of the fourth story in Amsterdam, and it's
no
clearly
real good...
it's clearly for the beauty shots. It's clearly for the other thing that you can't do is you have to have they try to play on your sympathies of Omega's realization of appreciating the small things. When the child turns around and smiles at him, when the puppet theater is going and he smiles, it's those moments
calliope.
of
which I couldn't
That's
spell.
What it was a calliope. And what he was, it was him realizing the simple things of existence in the real world again. And I liked that little moment. And you couldn't have had that and then had the Doctor turn around and shoot him. So you do have to kind of move that out. But I just think it was spaced out way too long.
Did they really give a good reason why he turned green?
He's decaying.
He was decaying, yeah. The body was breaking down because the transference wasn't complete because the Doctor interrupted the sequence. That's essentially what they said. So
I don't see why a body would look like that if it's
well,
decaying.
It doesn't matter. It happens.
They needed a nifty effect. And
yeah, exactly. They needed a monster is what they needed. They needed a monster. And Green shouts monster.
Green Rice Krispies is a lot
Frankenstein.
easier than some sort of digital antimatter effect where he's disintegrating.
So that's wonderful. The Tegan thing.
There's a part of me that still wishes he'd have strangled that child.
Yeah.
Just look at this cute little moment.
I kind of wondered if they were going to go there, but then I thought, no, they're building a moment here, and I appreciated that. Tegan, she was a bit. Yeah, I'm with you. Every time I see Tegan, I like her less and less. And this one, it puts her on her own kind of story, doing her own kind of thing. And it puts Nisa on her own kind of story and her own kind of thing by separating the two. But they really felt for some reason they needed to bring Tegan back, and I wish they hadn't, but that's neither here nor there.
I will throw out now, before Chrissy jumps all over me, because I'm sure she's got a letter already planned. I have not seen Kinda or Snake Dance.
Now,
which I understand are phenomenal Tegan
Kinda's
stories.
fantastic, and Tegan in that I still really enjoy Tegan. But Tegan,
keep in mind that always as with 90% of what stuff comes out of my mouth, take it with a grain of salt.
Tegan's put in a situation there that is quite unique.
Right.
So, But however, Tegan, I wasn't too excited to see her come back this time. I remember as a kid, I think I liked her, and because I think I was glad to see her come back and now with different eyes. I want to see those Nyssa and the Doctor stories. I don't subscribe to your theory that she really feels like that middle child, that she doesn't have that zest that Zoe does, because I think she does. I absolutely love her.
I think she has the potential for it. I don't think she's getting a chance.
Agreed. But I like the idea of this. I think it takes a long time to get there as far as Omega making the deal with the Doctor not to say anything, and the Doctor going to his presumed death. And I mean, that was cool too. I think that was a fantastic cliffhanger. I know I said that, before I've always said, well, the Doctor's going to live, but that was one of those neat ones that I suspected that he was probably in the Matrix because, well, back in the day I probably didn't, but this time I knew. There's not much more I can say about this. I totally enjoy this.
Here's an interesting one for you. Is the Doctor, apparently, they make reference to this, he's only the second Time Lord to ever be sentenced to death by the Time Lords.
Yeah, they said that in the
publicly.
Said that in the story, yeah.
You remember who the first one was?
Was it the Master?
No. Morbius,
that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's right.
That would be.
And neither one that has been sentenced to death has been carried through.
Yeah.
They're not very good at
pretty much sums up Time Lord
yes.
society. Impotent.
So, I think my appreciation of this one now is because I absolutely now, especially after listening to Omega, which we're going to go into next.
If you
this is such a 3-part. This is such a 3-act story for Omega.
Yeah.
And I love that. So, if we should move on, let's move on.
One thing real quick, going back to Holly's email, she mentions the different color dress uniforms that the Time Lords have. And I believe that was referenced, it's Deadly Assassin, isn't it, where that initially pointed out, where they commented that each of the different houses, the Pridonians and the whatnot, they all have different colors to represent what fraternity, basically, they came out in.
What house they belong
What house. Now, which I think is telling that at the end, in the end of time, that Rassilon's got everybody wearing red. Is that because he's, you're all going to dress alike and we're all going to talk alike and we're all going to follow the party line? Or is it because the Slytherin house has come to ascension and killed everybody else?
I hadn't thought of that. That's probably more,
So there's that. Really, really quick, we'd probably be remiss if we didn't at least touch on Mr. Colin Baker.
Oh, yes.
We
haven't touched on him yet.
Who, again, as I said before, I thought I think his hair was just shorter from when he was... Again, we were doing this out of the sequence.
I know.
Okay, I just make sure you realize that.
I realized that.
I had totally forgotten he was such a big character. And I think Chrissy brought that up when we talked about past actors that had roles before they were another role on Doctor Who, and she had called me out because I said, he played like a Gallifreyan centurion or something, and she said, well, he was kind of a big part, and I had forgotten that.
He wasn't just a centurion; he was like captain of the guard, and not only that, he was a big part of it.
And even after,
at least for the first 3 quarters,
even after her reminding me of that, I thought, oh yeah, he was a bigger part. I still, even going into it this time, went, why, he's even bigger part that I remembered from remembering that. So,
well, Blake and Sarah, who didn't tweet along, Blake was like, is that really? And Sarah was like, she told me later that she was like, I wanted to say, hey, that looks like Colin Baker. But that can't be Colin Baker. But wow, that really looks like Colin Baker.
And of course, there were jokes made galore about this is how he got the job, because he kills the Doctor. He
keeps shooting the Doctor.
Shooting the Doctor repeatedly. So of course that was the cliffhangers for, I don't know, the first 3 parts were all very much, did Colin Baker just assassinate Peter Davison? We had a lot of fun with that. And he was really good. And I think it's interesting that there's apparently a quote out there where he said that John Nathan Turner told him to actually tone that character down. Apparently he was much more filled with venom and spite originally. But I appreciated the fact that he got to be fair.
Yes.
That he wasn't just the cardboard stand-up villain you're captain of the guard, so you're obvious, and you have a funny hat.
His rooster hats.
Which he never wore. Just
Once.
the one thing,
Once.
Apparently he
For the
couldn't.
ceremonial execution.
Yeah, apparently he couldn't get through doorways with the thing on. But I
He
like
still
the
had to
fact
carry it everywhere.
that he had that moment of redemption when he does find that the Doctor's data stream has been intercepted, and that he kind of is like, well, this leads some credence to that. Unfortunately, it's at that part of the story that he drops out. And we never
don't
see him again after
anymore
that.
So, well,
That's
he,
when we go
he
back
no
to
longer
Amsterdam.
has to be the semi-baddie anymore
Yeah.
because now we've
Once we've
revealed the
established the main
actual
villain,
villains.
yeah.
Well, villains because
Villains.
that's at the point that we realize.
Hidden.
Yeah, Hidden is in cahoots with Omega.
One other complaint. I'd be interested to get your take on this. This again, we're watching these out of sequence, but we have Maudwin Undead.
Which Tegan comes back in the exact same outfit she's wearing in Maudwin. Did you realize that?
Well, she just stayed in this outfit through.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't realize.
Yeah,
that.
she stays in this same outfit that she comes back in, at least through Maudwin. Who knows how long past that?
I think she's wearing it all the
She
way up through
didn't bring a
Enlightenment.
change. She didn't bring a change of clothes with her. So
Maybe she didn't take all her clothes from the TARDIS.
She's going on vacation to visit her favorite cousin, but she didn't pack anything. That's not my complaint. We've got Maudwin Undead, which features a link to Earth from elsewhere, a space-time connection. We've watched Resurrection of the Daleks, which features a time bridge to Earth. And now we've got Arc of Infinity, which apparently leads to Amsterdam.
Well,
Is this
to some of that, it seemed to me that because the Doctor...
I didn't finish this question.
Okay,
No,
go ahead.
is this a John Nathan Turner thing that
Okay.
we've got to spend some time on Earth because it's economical and cheap, or I
Well,
mean,
that may be.
What was your?
I got the impression that Omega being on Earth wasn't so much of his choosing, it's because the Doctor interrupted the merging, or the what's it?
No. Well, the transference.
The transference, and he just kind of got displaced someplace, and that's where it
No,
landed.
because the Doctor doesn't intervene the transference until he's on Earth. Omega obviously is set up
Oh, okay,
in that,
so-
on the crypt. His
so he got-
TARDIS, which there's another
I got
issue
the-
I had for a
yeah.
long time, until he says, that's okay, I'll build another TARDIS. And so I thought, okay, obviously he built this one in his antimatter universe, but
I got the impression that he didn't arrive, or he wasn't set up before the transference.
no, that's
No, he was.
He was, and that's
was?
where he was
Okay, I
communicating
thought
with.
he
because he had
That's
the,
where he was
had the
communicating
bird
with Heron
monster.
from. Heron,
Yeah, but
whatever.
the transference happened so early.
What was it called?
Are we talking about the same
Egon,
thing?
You're gone. Air gone. What was it called?
Pterodactyl.
Something that he had created.
The giant chicken.
Yeah.
The transference where he tries to take over the Doctor's body, right?
You're talking about the entire transference at the beginning, because the beginning of the
Yeah,
transference
the
happens when the
beginning.
Doctor is on the TARDIS. No,
yeah,
he's
yeah.
in that crypt already by then. I assume.
I didn't get that impression. They never implied that to me.
He had to have already been there, or at least had a base of operations there, because the reason the pterodactyl bird attacked Stewart
That's
or Colin.
after.
No. The reason the pterodactyl bird attacked Stewart, and then he's zombified, and he comes out and attaches that power radiation thing
yeah.
to amp the attempt. That's how they track him down. Is that there was a shipment of this that we found that
I
went
thought
this
the
way.
transference happened, or all of that stuff happened after he tried to transfer to the Doctor.
No,
I don't believe so.
he, until he had that thing on the wall, he couldn't make the attempt.
Okay,
So
then never
for
mind.
whatever reason, the Arc of Infinity winds up curving to Amsterdam. It felt like kind of a almost tired plot contrivance at this point, that we've got this doorway to Earth that we can get to from, why?
I didn't have a problem with it. The why and the fact is because
It's becoming a little Tatooine for
Well,
me. It's the most important planet in the galaxy, even though nothing ever happened there.
well,
Well, look at how
obviously,
many
I
new
mean,
series we
yeah,
spend on Earth.
Yeah.
Amy's here, and she was a big.
But
was a big reason.
You
Yeah.
understand my reasoning,
The-
though. is
the-
that
yeah,
it just,
agreed.
Again,
But the
I'm not-
why
I'm
is
not-
because
I'm not
it's easier to
nitpicking.
do Earth
You're right.
stories.
It is
I mean,
it is
that's-
totally easier to do an Earth story. But if we're going to do a Gallifrey story, let's do a Gallifrey story. If we're going to do an Earth story, do an Earth story. If you want to send an entire story on Earth, fantastic. I have no problem with that.
But wait a minute.
don't.
It goes back to the fact that Keith brought this up earlier. It was a way to get Tegan back with the Doctor.
they
I think
needed-
that was contrived to right into there. And
She
there is
wanted a however long vacation.
I wish I had watched it. There's a special on the, and I don't know what it's about, but it's like the Ark in Amsterdam or something like that, or the Ark.
This says antimatter from
Amsterdam, and I think
That's
maybe
by
that
Sophie Aldred.
might have gone in, and
Maybe that explains it.
It's very and unfortunately, I only watched the Omega one because I was so enamored by Omega. But so that maybe that explains why the affinity for Earth, but. I don't know. I think we're doing on something that was
like I said. I just it's now
the
the third of the Peter Davidsons that we've and that's just the ones that we've reviewed at this point. And obviously they're out of order, but I mean
why did the Time Lords exile the Doctor to Earth? I mean, because he has an affinity for the planet, yes, but that's a simple way of saying, well, because we want to do more Earth-based Doctor Who stories. I mean, it's all but relevant to the producer.
But that decision. It's not that I don't want to say it didn't make sense. It's just I don't know. It just it felt like a contrivance. So okay. I'll leave it alone.
I see where you're coming from. Let's talk about Omega.
Let's talk about Omega.
Omega.
And by that we mean we've been talking about Omega, and now we're talking about the story.
Finished production of Omega.
Number 47 in the main line.
Yes.
Jumped quite ahead there.
Jolly Chronolidays.
Well, and rightfully so.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Jolly Chronolidays is offering sightseeing tours of the Sector of Forgotten Souls, the place where the ancient Time Lord, the place where in ancient times the Time Lord Omega detonated a star that enabled the Time Lords the power to travel through time and was lost. When the Fifth Doctor arrives, he discovers that Omega may not be as lost as was thought.
Dun, dun, dun. No, you're not getting a stronger one out of me, Glenn.
What? This... I mentioned before, I listened to this before I watched Arc of Infinity. And now, of non-Doctor Time Lords, Omega's my favorite.
I would agree with that.
He is so awesome. There's so much of this story that it took me a while to understand what was going on, but once I did, and it all clicked. And maybe not even once it all clicked, even before the big reveal that he's portraying himself as the Doctor and dealing with this this voice in his head. I enjoyed Omega so much. They portray him as such a sympathetic character in this story. And what a character development and statement about Omega and the Doctor. The fact that Omega is tortured by killing that entire species. I can't remember the name of him now. But the Doctor... the Doctor is, but Omega, it affects more. What a statement on the Doctor is that? I mean... And so much of this is Omega trying to deal with the fact that he thinks he killed this and he committed genocide, where really it was just the Doctor. And he has that great line to the Doctor, how can you live with yourself? That humanized Omega so much and took him out of that megalomaniac insanity that I knew from the Three Doctors. And that is one of the things I will always love about this story.
I agree with that part of it, yes.
You don't agree with other parts?
I like the fact that they fleshed Omega out. Literally. I like the fact that we're trying to move him from megalomaniac to sympathetic character. And I would have been okay with it, even if it was just he had met this woman as a psychic contact and literally fallen in love with her, and that all of this was for a wedding and to find a way to get her to cross over in his universe. If that had been the crux of the story, I'd have been fine with that, because it really showed a different side of Omega than what we've been shown. And I thought it was wonderful.
There was still that aspect of it, too.
But here's the problem. Then we flip. And that turns out, this is it's a feint. Yes, he loves this woman, but we're also going to kill a bunch of people in the attempt to bring her back because he's still a megalomaniac. But then it flips again because, he's not really a megalomaniac. It's because he's insane because he's got two different personalities going on. But then it flips again because, yes, he is a megalomaniac and he comes to understand that this is going on.
Megalomaniac, schizophrenic, and I don't remember what the other party says. When you have a megalomaniac, schizophrenic, something. Yeah. I can't remember what the other one was. Which was a fantastic line.
It was a fantastic. There were a lot of fantastic lines in this. There were so many.
I really enjoyed Peter Davidson in this story. He has so much
exceptionally good
sarcasm and great comments in this entire thing. Even not only when it's Omega as the Doctor, but when the Doctor actually shows up, he still has great lines. This is
the Dr. Light story. Now that I think about it.
It really is.
It really is.
Yeah. when we get the very exasperated Peter Davidson dealing with the old ladies on the tour bus, which was phenomenal.
They're so funny.
And his comment
the way
about
they tie that back in at the end, was fantastic.
His comments about you went to the Eye of Harmony and it's a very beautiful place, which that's the planet featured at the very beginning of the Five Doctors.
Oh, okay,
I think it was Tegan that mentions it's so calm. It's like Earth after a thunderstorm. Same cause and effect. It's not this. And then they make the comment, all it did was rain the whole time we were there. So, that was great. He's got the great line when he's arguing with the robot in the shop about, I'm browsing. That's not in my vocabulary. All right, fine. You're what does he call a robot?
I can't remember because I thought of that too. That whole conversation was
pickpocket money making machine or something.
Yeah.
That was great. His comment to Omega about I only ever traveled to alternate universes by accident. Come to think of it, I only travel anywhere by accident.
Yes.
I'm known for my prattling. I go on and on. I've won awards at my prattling. I can, I never go to the Brancos because they're quite droll and boring. But it's just on and on and on with it. And it was so good.
Wonderfully written.
Wonderfully written. Yeah. Omega was wonderfully written. All of the stuff that he did when they're having those quiet moments, I would have been fine if there had been no plot other than the Doctor and Omega get to sit down and have this conversation. That would have enthralled me when they're telling stories of, the guy who wanted to know everything and sharing information back and forth. I mean, it was just riveting to listen to all that. And then we get to the maybe he's crazy, maybe he isn't, maybe he's a megalomaniac, maybe he isn't, it doesn't matter, I'm going to kill a bunch of people. It just felt...
Sean, they never make any bones that he's not a megalomaniac. Ever. He continues to fly off the handle.
He does.
From time to time. And they continue to cement the fact that, this is one thing that's going to be consistent about Omega. That's why I don't think it's no surprise. No,
I mean, it's not the temper that bothers me.
What they do is they expound on the character and make you start to feel sympathetic and then you're reeled in and you realize, wait, no, this is still Omega. This is still the guy we've been dealing with since the Three Doctors.
It comes across as one of those attempts to humanize a villain that maybe you don't want. We get a Dalek that's not a bad Dalek. Yeah, right. When are you going to pull my other leg?
Okay,
I'm not buying that. But Omega is a different character. Omega's a possible because he is a tragic figure, and they talked about that. They talked about the fact that
that's what's wonderful about this story.
That was what was so good was. Is it a plot? Was it something that Rassilon set up to try and do? Or was it that he screwed up and he just won't admit it because he's such a genius that this happened to him? Or was it some other element? And we still don't know. And I thought that was wonderful.
But if you're going backstory
there is.
Yes, there is.
But if you're going to give me this sympathy for this character and turn him into somebody because I already sympathize with him. I already want him to be wow, he is such a tragic figure. He's a tragic villain. But if you're going to pull this and go that far with it, don't revert him back to type and allow all of the character construction that you've done through this whole story to be for naught and turn him back into this.
They never do go completely back to type.
It felt like they did. It felt like they couldn't make up their mind how they wanted to end it.
They go back to how Omega, because of this unbalance he has, they go back to this idea that Omega still slips back into this. I mean, the guy lived in the antimatter universe, and everything was based on his own will. So you don't just shake that, overnight. This guy still feels like he has to have power. He still has to have control. He still has to contrive ways to do it. Not to mention his ultimate goal is to get back there. That's the beauty of this thing is as the Doctor said, he almost ripped time and space apart to get to this world, and now he wants to go back.
Yeah.
That's the brilliance of this 3 parts, is the fact that he tries to get here once. He's successful another time, almost, and then this time he's been here because of the events of Arc Infinity. He's been here, and he doesn't like it. He's ready to go back. And ultimately the Doctor helps him in doing that. And he says, I owe him at least that much. And I love that about this. It is so well done. And Omega is never played too far to the left or too far to the right of that pendulum. He's always brought just to the edge of too much in this story. And the reason for that is to keep the listener on this roller coaster of emotions of, should I like Omega, should I not? And the one person that really has Omega pegged, even though it doesn't seem like that, is the Doctor.
Right.
And I love that about this story. It's so well done.
I
It's
agree
so
with
well
that, except for the fact that it to me, it felt very much like we got to the end of it, and they really weren't quite sure how they wanted to end it. Do we want to send Omega off and give him a send-off and be done with him? Or do we want to hold on to that just in case we need to bring him back as a villain sometime down the road and give you that doubt of this?
I suppose
they just played with it just
that.
about, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes too long to really pick a direction which way you're going to go with this character. I'll support you either way because you've done a fantastic job of building this up. But don't give me this lovesick Omega who's wonderful and you fell for him because of the thing, and then turn around and give me the I want to go back to my own universe Omega, and then turn around and give me the no, I'm going to kill a bunch of people to get back to my own universe.
Well,
I mean, it was too much different.
It seemed to me that the kill a bunch of people wasn't intentional.
Well, it was an offshoot, but he didn't feel any remorse about it.
Well, I don't know that he didn't.
That was the thing. It didn't bother him.
It didn't convey the fact that but also I think he knew that the cause outweighed the means. I mean, he knew that he had to get there. This is now his only chance, and he realizes that there's going to be some consequences to that.
Right,
but once he's there, he doesn't have to worry about those consequences.
But he's so torn over committing genocide.
But
to give the Time Lords
that's
their
an entire
power.
race. That's not the 6 people that are there, and 3.
Oh,
well, we
it was more
find
than
out
6,
later.
but-
Well,
70 some
I'm
odd people
sorry.
on the shuttle.
I never
but-
got the impression that all of those people were on that shuttle until the end,
Yeah.
and then I realized it, and I see where you're coming from there. But I didn't have that feeling up until it was a few stragglers that wandered on because it was the one gal in the thing.
I'm not trying to downplay the genocide of a race,
but that's my point. Is but not to mention. He's also, this is weighed so heavy on him that he committed genocide. He now at this point looks at himself as a monster. He looks at himself. Right. So what's a few more? So I totally sympathize with that. It's not like he was going to. He wasn't going to destroy. I mean, he's not even back hell bent to take out the Time Lords at this point. He's over that now.
But he's totally okay with
he doesn't like the fact that his name's been besmirched for all these years.
But he's totally okay with killing somebody just to hide the secret from the beloved.
But I like that element of the character
He's
as well.
He's a character that they've
we've
established, especially even though he feels guilty and remorse for the genocide, he's willing to do what needs to be done.
Right.
For whatever reason.
Agreed.
They've established that from early on in this story.
From the 3 Doctors
they've established.
He's willing to do whatever to get his means.
So he may feel guilty about it later, but he's still willing to do what needs to be taken. That's the other thing is,
I think what works. I think what works so well about this is that the majority of the struggle and the humanity that we get, the humanity that we get from Omega is all, for the most part, before the real Doctor shows up.
Yeah.
And so it's all a struggle within his own mind. So while we believe that it's the Doctor that he's talking to in the first place, and we're getting all of this emotional roller coaster of do we like him, do we not, do we like him, do we not, it's all an emotional roller coaster in his mind. And so when the Doctor shows up, you still have a little bit of that. But at that point, there's one focus that Omega's going through. So all of that is in his mind. And so that's what illustrates the insanity of Omega throughout that whole thing, is that this whole conversation has been in his own head. And that's why I think it's forgiving that you go through all those different, we go to one side, we go to the other side, we go to one side, we go to the other side, because it really is that schizophrenia within himself.
And I can understand that. I don't like it. And the reason is because it's been done. We went through it with Tom Baker in the Face of Evil, with the computer that had imprinted his personality on it. We went through it just earlier in a Big Finish audio with Paul McGann in Minuet in Hell, when the other guy was standing too close to the TARDIS and got blasted with it and thought he was the Doctor. So, I mean, it's been kind of a recurring theme that this happens to these people that the Doctor encounters. And by that point, it was such a huge revelation when the TARDIS landed as the cliffhanger for part 3, and he stepped out. It was just, my mind was blown. It was like, what?
Yes.
Oh! And then we got into it.
But I had to pause it, and I was like, wait, what?
Shouldn't some of those of us that had seen Arc of Infinity see
should have
this
seen
coming?
that coming.
Yeah.
I didn't.
I didn't either.
Still was totally surprised
So
by that.
I went from the highest high
imagine-
on that to 5 minutes into part 4 when they explained what happened. I was like, oh. And just felt completely deflated, let down that we're going with that.
See,
I
but I
never
sort of liked the throwaway excuse for that because it felt very Doctor Who to me. So that worked, and I knew that if we didn't get into it quickly and resolve this fast, we're already working into the third part or the fourth part here, and so I didn't want that last part to be dragged out for 2 hours, because I
Well, and this was a long one anyway, because this was
was a little bit longer.
2:30, I think.
It wasn't
you're
quite
right.
that long. I think it was
If I had my
like
book here,
2:15.
Sean, I could
Yeah,
tell
you
you.
could go. And am I incorrect that maybe I'm wrong? It felt like it was only 3 parts.
No, it was 4.
It was 4?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was 4. It was paced well though. It was a
really
No,
fast
it was
paced.
it was a fast listen. I can't say a fast read, but
Yeah. I absolutely love the fact that what was the gal's name? It was
she had
Cynthia.
she had a very similar name to the race of people that were wiped
Yeah,
out, which kind of
Cynthia.
confused me for a little bit because he kept talking about I killed all of them, and I'm like,
Cynthia.
we just talked to her.
She was
Is she a ghost?
She was messed up in the head too.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when the fix was reverting her back to her steward. This is persona. I was like, oh, she's kind of dealing with her own
We
schizophrenia
want to talk
here.
Harley Quinn.
Yeah,
here.
really.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, and then the
Absolutely.
fact that she mentions to him, well, I don't care that you committed genocide, and then he calls her a monster.
Yeah, exactly.
Never were two people more destined to be together.
Yeah,
than-
really.
I love Professor Erdicus. I love the idea of a Time Lord on a trip to discover the past, and he's this documentarian. I love that.
Oh,
I did
I
too.
love
That
the
is
fact that he's
fantastic.
on his third documentary about Omega because the story continues to change so often that he's got to come back and do it again. And I love his enthusiasm of being able to. That's why he took this trip, because he wanted to get it closer to Omega. And when he realizes what's going on, and he uses to go through to get to where the Doctor's going in order to. That was a brilliance. I love the fact that it was him that witnessed the Doctor strangling. Or it was him strangling. The Doctor strangled
him.
Erictus, and it was
the other actor.
was that Tarpov? Tarpov was the other actor.
No,
right?
Tarpov was the
Tarpov was the one that lost his hand.
the ones who lost his hands.
It's the other guy.
Was it Dowland?
Maybe.
Dowland sounds right.
That sounds
Terrible
right.
with names.
I-
and
I-
stuff.
yeah, so am
But
I.
anyway, the actor also brilliant. I absolutely love not a brilliant guy, a brilliant character.
Yes.
This guy is so the epitome of some actors, at least the
yeah.
stereotype of actors. I love that, and I love the fact that he's qualified to marry them to the Omega and Cynthia because of the fact that
He got ordained.
he got ordained because he was on some show where he played a priest. I mean,
As
I
a
absolutely
publicity
love
stunt.
that. Yes, I absolutely love that. It was fantastic. Just all of the little characters in this were just fantastic and fun, and
you know what I didn't
portrayed
like?
so well. Go ahead.
Was that the professor was on his last regeneration. because I enjoyed his character so much. I was
You
sad
wanted
to
him
see
to
him
come
go.
back. He actually
Yeah.
dies in this
Yeah.
one, yeah. That was a bit sad. And I didn't
was.
see that coming. I thought we were going to have kind of a Jago and Lightfoot thing. I thought we were going to have these two guys that were going to be able to carry on later and have their own adventures.
That would have been an interesting
It so would have.
subline, really. I mean, you've got these two competing documentary filmmakers with different sides of the story on all of this history. And I loved the line that the actor, or I guess it was the historian said when he said, history is boring. People don't get history unless it's put on television with a bunch of people in costume. And then we immediately flip to the actor who's going, people don't get history unless it's written down in a book.
Yes, absolutely. It was
And
such a
the
fantastic
play between them
from the difference of
Yeah.
people. That was what was cool as well. And I absolutely loved Maven and Glenda. They were fantastic. It was the two old ladies, right?
I couldn't stand the two.
Now-
and then the end came.
No, I loved them. They were so endearing, and they were so. I mean, it was just the two typical tourist women. Where you've got the one lady and the one lady that couldn't hear. Now, let me ask you, Maven. She was a TARDIS. Is that what I gathered from the very end?
I didn't catch that.
That the one lady was only, but the other lady was her TARDIS. I
didn't-
swear that's
wow.
what I got from that.
That's kind of where the other part of the story that felt very weird.
That felt weird to me too. I will be the first to admit.
Whichever one of them was the one that did all the talking turned out to be the Time Lord from the
think that
Prevention Agency.
No, Maven was because she kept saying Maven,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So Maven was the TARDIS.
Maven, and the deaf one turned out to be her TARDIS. I don't know how that works, but you know.
that was a bit odd for me. I like the
I didn't
like
get that
the, I like
impression,
the
but-
attempt, but I
love the idea that
We've had
there's
too
this
much-
future society where the Doctor is no longer around, and he's
Yeah.
now honored almost like Rassilon. It's that just made my head spin.
which is another fantastic idea of the fact of how Omega's backstory has been altered so many times. You wonder how many times between now and then that the Doctor's story has been.
He's going to be a
been
renegade,
changed.
and
that they're here to make sure that the real story is portrayed essentially.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that they bring the actor to the future to Gallifrey in order to play the Doctor.
Yeah.
That was one. I would love to see him come back in an audio.
Oh,
Of course,
that would be cool.
You get the impression that perhaps that was the other thing I wondered. This sparked some interest in me that they are from his future and that they revere him as this hero and this, for lack of a better word, a gladiator. And it makes me wonder how much of that is based on the Time War. That him leading in that, like maybe they're at the very
this come out
verge.
before?
Maybe it did. Did it?
I thought a lot of this Big Finish, especially early on, came out before.
well, Ian Collier died in because I looked him up.
Didn't this come out too? Or maybe it was later than that.
Because he died in
Okay,
08,
but now
I
let
think.
me put it this
I mean,
way.
this is only
okay.
this is celebrating
This-
the 40th anniversary.
You're right. Let me do this. Well, the 40th anniversary would have been just 10 years
73,
ago.
83, 93, 03.
Yeah,
So it
we're
came
not-
out in 03. That's right. It did come out in 03. So it would have been before. Okay.
Yeah.
So pre-Time War.
All right. So
So it
I'm
makes
going
me
to go
wonder
into
how there's
I'm
a
going to
future.
go into the presumption because yes,
How
it
is there a
does
future?
it does interest me in the future. And can you then maybe place these people in some time frame, maybe at like I know Gallifrey doesn't work the same, but maybe like a 10-year, like maybe these people are the propaganda machine for Gallifrey that is putting the Doctor up on a pedestal and so
okay.
that because he's going to lead the people, he's going to lead and that's why he's able to, he was obviously recruited to come fight in the Time War. I'm doing the thing where
You're retconning.
we rework it into the. But it
That's
sparked
interesting.
that thought in my head that is that why they? Because I thought the same thing. Is this a future that doesn't exist now because of the
I
time lock?
instantly thought, oh, this is a future where the Doctor's dead. For some reason, the Time War didn't even enter my mind when listening to this.
I mean, I'm like I say, I'm presupposing, I'm retconning as you said it, but
I like it, though.
Well, the glory of a Time War is that you can have all of these splintered off futures that now don't exist because of
That's
the
true.
events of this,
That's true.
and maybe
So the
this
Doctor's
is
not
one
a
of
hero.
them.
He's not revered as a hero somewhere.
I'm not saying that he isn't.
But he was at some point in that timeline. At one point.
That's true.
That was one of the
Not
things
anymore, but
that I couldn't decide if I liked it or not, because it was so shrewd with how they did it. Where we've got this organization that goes around and history's boring, so we're going to make it up for you. And there's a part of me as a scholar, as a fan of history, if not a student of it, that finds that very offensive. That just you can't do that. But it's so true. It's exactly, people don't want history. They want the dramatized, prettied up version of it, whether it's a movie about something or Disney building a theme park on Gettysburg. I mean, it's they very much want.
They take liberties in order to make history more entertaining.
And I couldn't decide with the portrayal of Omega through these people that he's been Saturdaized to this point where they've got an actor playing him and being swashbuckling, and they've got them speaking, methinks perhaps thou dost not understand, because obviously, Omega's old, so he must speak like Shakespeare.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
And the absurdity of that, but at the same time, it's like, I can't really fault you for that, because that's how, it kind of really towed that line between don't meet your heroes and the pedestals that you put them on, because I kind of fall with the Doctor. I really revere Omega in some ways, like you said, Keith, that he's your favorite Time Lord, because he's such an interesting character and such a tragic figure and all this kind of stuff. And it really kind of almost felt like a personal attack watching all this stuff play out at the beginning, that he was treated so shabbily by history, worse even than he's no longer revered on Gallifrey, which would be one way of looking at it, but now he's the butt of a joke, and it just kind of felt like, oh man. And so I think that was another part of it that just kind of, for whatever reason, didn't sit well with me, even though it was so well done that I can't really fault them for how it was put together.
Right.
But when we got to the end, and now they're doing it to the Doctor, that he's a part of the system, and that there's a statue of you, and there's a museum, and blah blah blah, which I thought of the Forgotten.
Yes,
it made me wonder maybe if that wasn't part of it.
Absolutely.
That all of this fits into that. It was kind of like,
oh great, the same thing's going to happen to the Doctor.
So yeah, I did like the idea that they're going through, even though they call themselves the Celestial Preservation Agency.
They're still editing.
So they're the CPA, but they're editing as they go, and it felt very much like as with anything, the line that always comes up is from Next Gen, when he says Gowron has been rewriting Klingon history to make it suit. That's exactly what they're doing, is they're rewriting history to make sure that whatever the current administration presents is going to be the official version of it. And so I kind of like the parallel that it runs, though, with the history of the show. Mm-hmm. That the Doctor started off as a renegade, and we didn't know how renegade he was until Troughton leaves. And that as he's gone on, he's become more and more of a hero, to the point where now that he can turn, the tide of war with just the mention of his name,
right?
And what hero status he's. And I thought, well, that's kind of clever how that was put together.
Very interesting. Yeah, I would agree. I do want to say that there's a good chunk of Omega, in a past Doctor's book called The Infinity Doctors, which I haven't read, but I plan to put that on my list of books to review as we start reviewing books down the line. So. Hopefully we'll revisit Omega one more time.
I'd like to hear more about him.
What's next on the schedule, Sean?
Well, next on the schedule is, now that we finished up with Omega in our Rogues and Renegades. I couldn't say it there for a minute. Next week for Friday Night Who, or this week, depending on how you want to look at it, we go into Colin Baker's era, Sixth Doctor, with The Mark of the Ronnie. And so we're going to get a little Ronnie action going on.
Ronnie, I finally get to see what that's all about.
You finally get to see her origin as opposed to her. Now we're not even going to talk about that.
But we are going to talk about that.
Sure you don't want to do Time of the Ronnie first?
No, we do Mark of the Ronnie first. And then Time of the Ronnie.
Okay.
And then Dimensions in Time.
No, we're not doing Dimensions in Time.
It was on your list.
I crossed it off.
It's on there.
Because we've already
Guess
talked
what?
about
Just
it.
like the
We've
Three
already
Doctors,
reviewed it.
I'm going to bring it up.
All right.
It's fine to bring it up, but we're not doing an
If
actual
we're
review.
going to talk about yes, exactly. We're going to talk about these renegades. We aren't leaving it off the table because it doesn't make any sense not to refer to them.
No, you're right. You're right.
Even though Dimensions of Time not canonical. But I think it lends some insight into the character.
I think
it's apocryphal.
I think once you watch Mark of the Ronnie and Time of the Ranny, you'll have a new appreciation for Dimensions in Time, because you're like, this is the same sort of idiotic scheme she came up with in those other two stories.
I might need to go back and rewatch it then.
There you go. I rewatched it today because I was going through some of my old videos and stuff, and I was like, here's Dimensions in Time. And we'll talk about this more next time. But I sat down and I watched it, and I thought, you know what? Here's what happens. When I watch Dimensions in Time, what do? I go, that stupid phone. I got to get that further away. That was buzzing in our show.
Is that what it is?
Week. Yeah. Well, it's in here.
Well, see, I heard it. Maybe I heard it through you.
Yeah. Anyway, I watch Dimensions in Time, and what happens every time, inevitably, is I think way back in the back of my mind that I don't mind Dimensions in Time. But what happens is I sit down and I think, okay, what's this story really about? What happens every time I watch it? Oh, there's Perry. Oh, there's the second Doctor. Or the second Doctor, he's not in. There's the fourth Doctor. Oh, there's the fifth Doctor. Oh, look. Oh, that's Susan. Oh, look, and then there's Leela, and so I'm all giddy because I see all these old companions pop up, whether it's in character or not, or in wrong outfit like Leela. I sit there and I go, oh, that's her, that's him, that's her, that's him. By the end of the story, what am I doing? Oh, what's that about? Oh, yeah, this is the time I was going to focus on the dang story. And so this time I sat down and I went, okay, I'm going to focus on this story because we're talking about the Ronnie, so I'm going to find out what her motivations are and what's actually going on here. And what did I do? I sit down and went, oh, look, there's Perry. Oh, there's the brig. Oh, the brig, I miss him so much. Oh, look, there's Captain Yates. And then I got to the end of it and I thought, oh, I failed again. So what it is I'm going to sit down and watch the dang thing without going fanboy on it.
I might have a bit more fanboy of the moment on it now because I've been introduced to a bit more.
You'll recognize more, so you'll be even more distracted from the story.
Really?
Anyway, so that's coming up.
So nothing happens in Dimensions of Time.
It's a cameo fest.
It's a cameo fest.
It must not, because you think I'd get it sometime.
There's a part of my brain that honestly thinks it's figured out what is going on. It's like you remember the bomb equation?
And then the mercury switch.
you remember Die Hard 3? When they're on they've got the 2 jugs of water, and it's a 5-gallon jug and a 3-gallon jug, and he's got to figure out how to get 4 gallons of water on the thing. And then they cut, and then they come back, and he's like, wait, we've got so much water in here, so much water here. It's 4 gallons. Yeah, and he puts it on the scale. It's like, you skipped a step. And every time I watch this, my brain would start to work on the math problem. And I'm not a math guy. I don't want to know. I really don't care. But I couldn't help it. And I finally sat down one day. We were doing this at Blockbuster when I worked there. And we started doing math and figuring out how this works. And I finally figured the stupid thing out. I think part of my brain is doing that with Dimensions in Time. It's slowly working on how is this works. Yeah, but it has to be exact. So how do you
exactly
do it?
Half of each?
Should I go through it? Do you want to know the math? Okay.
You can
I'll tell you off mic.
Is it one of those things?
Now that you got every one of the listeners going, well, how does it work, Sean?
Okay, so here's how you do it, all right? Here's how you get 4 gallons of water. You fill the 5-gallon jug. You pour the 5-gallon jug into the 3-gallon jug. So now you've got 2 gallons of water left in the 5-gallon jug, right?
Yes.
Pour it out. No, wait. Yes, you pour it out. No.
Oh, no.
I'll record this later and figure it out. I have to walk back through the steps to remember how to do this, because you wind up pouring one of the jugs completely out and then refilling it and then pouring it out again in order to get this to work.
And then at that point. But go ahead,
yeah, it's something at that point that it works.
Is Dimensions in Time one of those things where I can't remember what it's from, but you're looking at something and you see one thing, but what's really going on is back here and you can't recognize it?
Oh, yeah, it's the, what do you call it?
You know what I'm talking about?
What is that, Sean? Yeah, the thing they wore around their necks in... right?
Yeah.
Perception filter.
It's like...
It was a perception filter. Yeah.
Kind of like the...
I think that's what it is.
The giant chicken thing in Vincent and the Doctor.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there
very
you go.
Similar.
Perception filter.
Sean's still trying to figure out the...
Okay,
he's got it.
You fill... Shush. You fill the 3-gallon jug, and you pour that into the 5-gallon. So now you've got 3 gallons of water in the 5-gallon jug. You refill the 3-gallon jug and pour what you can into the 5-gallon jug. So now the 5-gallon jug is completely full, but you're left with only 2 gallons of water No, you're left with only 1 gallon of water in the 3-gallon jug. You pour out the 5. You pour the 1 gallon of water from the 3-gallon jug into the 5, and then you refill the 3 and pour it into the 5, and you're left with 4 gallons of water in the 5-gallon jug.
Ta-da!
Very well done.
Thank you. But they cut part of that out of the movie, and it has bugged me since whenever that movie came out.
It wasn't even a deleted scene?
No, they're in the middle of trying to figure this out, and they cut to something, and when they come back, they're both standing in the fountain. They've got water all over the place, and he's like, wait, how much is in here? And it's like, you can't do that to us. You can't not show us how to do that. And it took me years to figure out.
I'm sure it was shot. It's just edited poorly.
Well, I don't know if they even cared. I just figured they were like, maybe they didn't even have the math at that point. They just thought, we've got to get this bomb defused. How do we, okay, move on. So, I don't know. Anyway, so we're doing Mark of the Ronnie next week for Friday Night Who. We will not be reviewing it next week, though.
Correct.
Because we will be covering Sarah Jane Adventures Season 2.
Got a week to watch
Sarah
them all.
Jean.
So if you haven't started yet, you've
Sarah
got 1
Sarah
week
Jean.
left.
I don't know why I said Jean. Sarah Jane.
Sarah Jean. It's her sister.
I became dyslexic in my speech.
And then the following week, May 11th, for Friday Night Who, we'll be watching Time of the Ronnie. And then we will have an adversary archive on the Ronnie, including Mark of the Ronnie, Time of the Ronnie, and apparently Dimensions in Time. So,
Okay,
Like I
everyone.
said, we're not reviewing it. We're just going to have to make mention of it.
yes.
That's 1 week to watch Season 2 of Sarah Jane.
That's right.
If you haven't.
If you haven't, yes.
Which I haven't.
And then lots of goodness coming up later. So.
And lots of goodness coming up later. And we're coming to the end of our roads here. So.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week. Until next week, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everyone.
Be seeing you.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.